Rice, School Board Chair of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. on this 28th day of June, 2022. Members of the public, as always, are able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. And we welcome in particular those present with us in person this evening. Madam Clerk, would you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in school board chambers are Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Felton, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Owens, and Ms. Riggs, and currently attending via Zoom is Ms. Weems.
Thank you. And for the record, Ms. Weems is away on personal travel. All right, I ask everyone now to please join me in a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now have some recognitions, turning it over to Vice Chair Mrs. Melnick.
This evening, the school board has the pleasure of recognizing division students, teams, and staff who have been awarded or recognized during state, multi-state, or national competitions or events. We would like to thank viewers and guests for their patience this evening as we have several recognitions, but we feel it is important to celebrate the many students, staff, and volunteers who make our division strong. With that in mind, we are pleased to announce the school board recognition recipients for June 22nd, 2022. Mrs. Anderson.
Good evening. I didn't want this to slip because as a former soccer parent from Cox High School, I'm so proud of these boys. Our first honoree is the boys soccer team from Cox High School. The Falcons soccer team earned their way to the state championship game by defeating Deep Run High School in the state semifinal when C.J. Vacos scored the difference-making goal during the second overtime period to give Cox a 2-1 win. The Falcons faced Riverside High School in the state championship game. Goalie Noah Ionar was a brick wall in net preventing Riverside from scoring. On offense, Robbie Morgan scored less than 6 minutes into the game and added another midway through the second half to complete the 2-0 championship victory and give Cox their first state title in 12 years. At this time, please welcome the state champion Cox High School boys soccer team. Please hold your applause until all have been introduced. Jace Arcona, junior midfielder. Ryan Bessie, junior defender. Dax Booth, sophomore midfielder. Sam Braywood, sophomore goalkeeper. Ryder Cho, sophomore forward. Owen Comain, junior defender. Aaron Deans, senior defender. Mikey Farmer, senior forward. Chase Foster, sophomore midfielder. Josh Haggerty, sophomore midfielder. David Hartwell, junior defender. Trip Horner, freshman forward. Nolan Ionauer, senior goalkeeper. Kyle Kephart, sophomore defender. Alex Moser, junior forward. Gerald McDonald, junior forward. Tyler Merklinger, sophomore defender. Robbie Morgan, senior midfielder. Matthew Pope, senior forward. Zach Tang, senior midfielder. C.J. Vacos, senior forward. Carter Whalen, freshman defender. The Cox soccer team finished the season with a 15-4-1 record. Though the season had its moments of uncertainties and injuries, the team grew into playing their best soccer at the end of the season, which really matters. Coach Eric Blackmore says, "Our group has always been about being part of something greater than ourselves, As a coach, I never had to ask that of them. Our team has players who accept roles, do their best to excel in their role, and consistently put the group ahead of themselves and their personal interests. The players' competitive character and spirit, accountability on and off the field, and love for and trust in each other brought out the best in all of us. End of quote. Several players also received postseason honors, including Old Tidewater Player of the Year, Mikey Farmer, Class 5 State First Team honorees, Mikey Farmer and Aaron Deans, Class 5 State Second Team honoree, Josh Haggerty, Region 5A First Team honorees, Mikey Farmer, Aaron Deans, Josh Haggerty, and Dax Booth, and Region 5 Second Team honorees, Robbie Morgan and CJ Vakos. Congratulations to all of you. We are proud of you and your accomplishment.
Our next honoree is Princess Anne High School junior Harrison Lee, the 2022 boys tennis singles champion, state champion. In addition to this accomplishment, Harrison won the boys 5A singles region championship and competed in doubles competition, finishing as region runners-up. Over the season, Harrison compiled a 5-1 regular season singles and doubles records. Harrison is the team captain of the Princess Anne tennis team and finished the season ranked 70th nationally. He is enrolled in the IB program and currently holds a 4.2 GPA. Congratulations, Harrison. We're very proud of you.
Our final honorees
this evening are from First Colonial High School, and they are seniors Alex Sonda and Melissa Young, the 2022 girls tennis doubles state champions. Alex and Melissa captured the VHSL Class 5 girls doubles tennis championships on Friday, June 10th at Huntington Park in Newport News. The girls are coached by Diane Deaton. And girls, I wish I could be there in person because my strength was doubles, and I know how important the doubles point is, team victory. And I would like to also add that your coach is awesome. Diane and I have played doubles together and have competed against one another, and she is a human backboard. But congratulations, Coach Deaton, and Alex and Melissa, job well done. That is awesome. Congratulations. And that concludes our honorees this evening, Chair Rye.
All right, that brings us to adoption of the agenda. Colleagues, are there any modifications? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Mrs. Hughes, a second. Mrs. Franklin, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote?
I approve, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a unanimous vote. The motion passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we turn it over to Dr. Spence for your superintendent report.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. I'm pleased to share a few items of interest to you in our Virginia Beach school community this evening. First, I'd like to begin by recognizing Catherine Pyatt, who's a Bayside Elementary School teacher, recently honored with a Cox Education Hero Award. This is an award presented annually to 10 teachers in Virginia who demonstrate dedication to the profession and go above and beyond for their students. Mrs. Catherine Brum, principal of Bayside Elementary School, says, "What an honor this is for Ms. Pyatt and our school. She's an amazing teacher, and we are fortunate to have her here at Bayside. Educating our youth is a 24/7 job," said Nika Chazor, Vice President of Government and Public Affairs at Cox Communications, Virginia. And today, teachers step into being mentors, cheerleaders, and advocates for their students and families. Our 2022 Cox Education Heroes connect with students in remarkable ways and truly foster environments where our future leaders are thriving. Ms. Pyatt began her teaching career with Virginia Beach as the pandemic swept across this country, and she was immediately ready to step into remote instruction and embrace virtual teaching. Despite some of the obvious challenges, she displayed incredible dedication to her students and continuously went above and beyond to provide them even just a few minutes of normalcy while also navigating that new uncharted world of online teaching. As a Cox Education Hero awardee, she will receive $1,000 to revamp her classroom, which is a generous donation she plans to use for enriching the education of her students, explaining that I was fortunate to work with wonderful students and their families, and this award will not only help me as an educator, but it will make a difference in the lives of so many students now and in the future. So congratulations, Catherine. Thank you for being a great teacher who puts students first. I saw her principal here, so I bet she's here. Could you stand up so we can recognize you? Thank you. Congratulations. Tonight, I'm also proud to extend my congratulations to Old Donation School teacher Dennis Borgerding, who was selected as the winner of the 2022 Civil Air Patrol Aerospace Education Teacher of the Year Award. Being singled out as the most outstanding aerospace education teacher in the Civil Air Patrol is a significant honor. Mr. Borgerding's selection was based on his numerous achievements within the Civil Air Patrol and favorable recognition by his commanders, and for possessing those honorable attributes of American teachers who are inspiring the next generation of aerospace-related STEM citizenry, those teachers who go above and beyond to ensure exciting and engaging programs are provided to their students. As the Aerospace Education Teacher of the Year, he will be honored at the upcoming National Conference in Louisville, Kentucky on August 25th, and this award will be presented along with several other prestigious awards during one of the keynote sessions. So congratulations, Dennis. We're very proud to count you amongst the great educators of Virginia Beach, and certainly as a parent of a child that you have had the opportunity to influence, I'm also very appreciative. Could you stand up so we can thank you for your efforts? So I was excited to be joined last week by many of you as we proudly watched nearly 4,800 Virginia Beach City Public Schools walk across the stage at our convention center and receive their diplomas. The joy and excitement was palpable, and I was extraordinarily proud to witness the culmination of our graduates' journey, a journey marked not only by unprecedented challenge, but also the amazing resilience and perseverance of young people who saw the heart of their high school careers transformed in ways we could not have predicted. That said, the achievements of our graduates are truly something to behold. While there will be more data to come, which will no doubt add to the picture of their success, I'm pleased to share some preliminary information this evening about the class of 2022, who were offered over $85 million in scholarships and who accepted over $54 million in scholarship money. Just to put that in perspective, 2022 grads accepted nearly 11 million more than 2021 grads and over 20 million more than 2020 grads. That's a picture of resilience, perseverance, and achievement. And this class of 2022 is proving that Virginia Beach continues to be a world-class school division filled with world-class educators providing students amazing opportunities, and those students are being recognized for everything they've accomplished while traveling an incredibly challenging and rigorous path. I know you all share in the deep pride that I felt during graduation week, and I continue to feel that pride for everything our students and staff achieve in extraordinary times, and quite frankly, even in ordinary times. And I know this class will continue to make us proud. So I congratulate them. I wish them all the best as they move on to their next endeavors. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Okay, agenda item 10, approval of meeting minutes for the June 7th, 2022 special school board meeting. Are there any modifications? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Mrs. Riggs, and a second, Mrs. Holtz. All in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have 9 ayes. We're gonna have two abstentions. Ms. Hughes
I need to abstain because I wasn't here.
and Ms. Franklin? Thank you. So we have 9 ayes, no nays, and 2 abstentions. So the motion did pass.
I don't believe Mrs. Weems was here for the special meeting. She may not have heard that it was the special meeting we were voting on.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote for the minutes for the special meeting on June 7th? She has her hand raised.
But she wasn't here.
I'm sorry, I'll abstain. I'm
It-
sorry,
It was the
I'm in
special
mountains
meeting.
It
and
was a
I'm
special
getting-
meeting.
And I'm not hearing many of you. I was not there June 7th. So I'll try to hang in there as well as I can, but like Miss Franklin, I cannot hear, and sometimes I cannot hear you, but I was not there June 7th, so I'll
Okay.
abstain.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. So, Madam Chair, we have 8 ayes, no nays, and 3 abstentions. Thank you. So the motion did pass.
Okay, now we can move on to minutes for the June 13th regular school board meeting. So colleagues, any modification to these minutes? Hearing none, a motion to approve. Mrs. Hughes and a second, Mrs. Melnick. All in favor, show a raised hand.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 10 ayes. And Ms. Manning, how do you vote?
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
Thank you. We have 1 abstention, so the motion did pass.
Thank you. That brings us to the public hearing portion of the meeting. The school board will hear public comment on the Public-Private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act, otherwise known as PPEA. And our speaker this evening has 3 minutes to present and may be given a 30-second warning before time expires. So, Madam Clerk, would you introduce our speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our online speaker is Ken Lubick. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I have not seen the details of the, how this money is spent. 2 of these schools are I live in District 4. Bayside's outside of District 4, but a lot of the kids that live in my neighborhood go to Bayside High School, and I live very close to Betty Williams School. And I think it's great that those schools are being replaced. I think that as an example, Old Donation School is a beautiful piece of architecture. And I think that's very important to have beautiful buildings for our students. You know, the old brick block buildings that we're replacing are, I guess they were the rage in the 50s or 60s, but they're very depressing, not inspiring. And I just don't understand how, and I have a daughter at Bayside High School, and it's great. The Health Science Academy has been great. I think the kids need lots of support, but I don't understand the $197 million. That seems about maybe double or 30 or 40% more than it should be. I just feel like we have other really serious problems that need to be addressed as soon as possible, dealing with the morale of employees and teachers and the standardized test scores and reading levels and those types of things. It's just, I know it's apples and oranges in some people's minds, but I think it's a serious situation. And like I said, I'm not advocating for the cheapest, smallest possible construction. It just seems exorbitant, but I'd be happy to look at the details, and it's just seems kind of extreme to me. I don't know if this money's coming from a different source. I tried to look online all over the place, and I'm very good at finding things, and I was not able to find the details of where the funding is coming for these schools, but I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, that was our only online speaker for the public hearing. We're going to move on to public comment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So the school board will now hear public comment on matters relevant to pre-K to 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. Persons not called to the podium to address the school board are asked to be respectful of speakers, so the school board and persons observing the meeting are able to hear and observe each speaker's comments. Persons signed up to speak will be called up 3 at a time. For speakers, the speaker should proceed to line up when the speaker's name is first called. In-person student speakers will be called first, followed by student speakers participating through Zoom. Each speaker should begin speaking once their name is called. As a reminder, each has 3 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. The clock begins running once the speaker's at the podium or the clerk has called the online speaker to unmute. Once the speaker's time has expired, we ask that you stop making remarks and leave the podium so the next speaker can be queued. Speakers are responsible for being in chambers or online when they're called to speak. If they're not, the school board, at its sole discretion, may allow the speaker to speak at the end of the public comment session. And members of the audience will not be recognized to assist an online speaker with making online comments. As always, the school board invites the public to submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. So with that, Madam Clerk, please introduce our first speaker of the evening.
Our first speaker is Kelly Whitehouse, then William O'Connell. Speaker number 3 had to cancel, and then it will be Kathleen Slindy.
Good evening. Where we have a short pause here for a technical issue. Mr. Freeman's getting up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, we'll start over again with a welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Rye. I'm here because it was brought to my attention an article written that members of the school board were quoted in that insinuate I have slandered and defamed the administrators of my daughter's school. I'm here to tell you that is incorrect. Let me tell you the Virginia legal definition of slander is a false statement of fact published or communicated to another person that causes injury to the reputation of the subject of the statement. I spoke 0 untruths. I can back up everything I said. My daughter did have hands put on her by a school employee on the school bus, and it is caught on tape. My daughter does cry out when this happens. The CPS investigation is still ongoing. The civil suit and the criminal suit are still ongoing. It was insinuated that none of this happened, and I made it up. I'm not sure where that came from. But 3 area administrators stood up here and said that they wanted protection from slanderous comments and such. I did nothing wrong. Now, Ms. Anderson and I have spoke on the phone about this because she is quoted as saying that at the time of the meeting, she directed the topic to the meeting that I spoke at, where I was the only person who spoke about an incident on a school bus. She says, at that time, a woman said her child was abused on a school bus and demanded the resignations of Rosemont Elementary. During the recorded public comment, she alleges that the school's principal and assistant principal acted improperly after learning of the allegation. That is true. I was told no one touched my daughter because they viewed the tape before I did. And when I viewed the tape, clearly my daughter was touched. And then it says, Ms. Anderson, this is where you're quoted as saying, Anderson later said that the claims were determined to be unfounded. They're not. It's still an ongoing investigation. It hasn't been deemed valid or invalid as of this point. So I just wanted to bring that up. I was irritated that I was being accused of slander when in fact this is me being slandered. I spoke no untruths. I don't think members of this board liked that I exposed public information about Miss Carrie Hall. You can look it up yourself. She does get speeding tickets in the school zone, unless there's another Carrie Ann Hall with the exact same birth date.
Please stick to K-12 education.
Well, was an administrator at the school. I believe that is included in this. I know you're going to try to censor me, Miss Rye. I anticipated this.
No, issues with
I'm being accused of slandering someone, and I'm telling you how I'm not slandering them. It's not slander if it's the
30
truth.
seconds.
That's my point in all of this. And again, I didn't want to throw this out here, but maybe this will get someone's attention. Maybe someone will care now. My daughter is, in fact, black. Miss Anderson was shocked to hear that. And that is the only time during this that she showed any type of emotion whatsoever. Hate to throw it out there, but this school has a reputation of not ensuring the care and protection of special needs student, particularly special needs student of color. That is my problem with this whole thing. I slandered no one. Enjoy.
And that is time. Our next speaker is William O'Connell, then Kathleen Slindy, then Grant Mayfield. William O'Connell. Our next speaker is Kathleen Slindy.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. My name is Kathleen Slindy. I'm the president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I'll begin by congratulating all my colleagues on keeping schools open 5 days a week all year. That was no small accomplishment, and it happened because everyone worked together. VBCPS employees were a force to be reckoned with. Bus drivers made double and triple runs. Specialists substituted repeatedly. Teaching assistants substituted all over the buildings, filling in where needed. Custodians, cafeteria, and office staff did more with less. Our school nurses, counselors, and psychologists diligently met the needs of students and staff during this difficult year. Even administrators and central office employees were called on to substitute. It is undeniable that no one could have succeeded this year without the help of everyone. And the VBEA stands united with everyone who worked so diligently despite the stress and hardship that work created. Educators and all those who work in schools know the truth in that saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And all of the school division employees are vital parts of that village. Our success is a result of that united work. The rewards of that work are the success of our students, the shared joy in those results, and the knowledge that the goal of having the very best and most fair compensation for all of our employees will continue to be a priority. This year, that means that everyone gets the 5%, and tonight, the additional 1% for a total of a 6% raise, even those above the 30-year mark. And any additional raise amounts must be given to all as well. I want to go back to that village idea because schools are just a part of that village. Our village includes all of Virginia Beach. This year, an important part of the village failed to prioritize our students. When additional funds through the revenue sharing fund formula should have come to schools, City Council kept them. Before that decision was made, a memo from VBCPS administration stated that any additional funds would be used for a bigger raise. And so administration and the VBA asked that City Council allocate the additional $22 million, but they kept that money. I guess we needed more people to make some noise at those budget hearings because the City Council kept that money. As Virginia Beach residents, we know that when businesses like Amazon consider locating in Virginia Beach, they look at our schools. When those businesses bring additional tax earnings, they are here because our schools are world-class due to the work of the Virginia Beach City Public School employees every day. That's part of the reason that the revenue sharing formula is a sound idea. If a different decision had been made, then we could be talking about a raise closer to the 10%
30
our
seconds.
neighboring school districts have given. And if there are additional funds made available, I would be happy to say thank you for an additional 8%, 9%, or 10% raise for everyone. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Grant Mayfield.
Good evening.
Good evening. So technically, I think I may not have standing here because I'm actually a Tennessee resident, but I'm active duty military, and my children attend Virginia Beach Public Schools. We PCS'd here in January, and while I have very strong personal opinions, I live and serve in a pluralistic society. and I seek to serve as a Navy chaplain, all from people from all walks of life and faith, while maintaining my own convictions as well. However, as a parent, my wife and I believe very strongly that the parents are the primary discipler of the child, that we are the ones that teach them about sex and have the greatest influence on them over that. That's why I appreciated very much the notice that we received from our school when our children were going to be receiving sex education. I appreciated that greatly, and were given the opportunity to either opt out of particular portions or all of it. I thought that was fantastic. But I was caught off guard while I was on travel for work, and my son and I, we talk daily. He's in 6th grade, and he began to ask me what it meant to be bisexual, what it meant to be asexual, pansexual. And I said, son, where did you hear these things? And he said, they were on my teacher's door. And he attends Independence Middle School, and there was a Pride Week, Spirit Week theme where students were encouraged to wear their pronouns, encouraged to wear colors corresponding with their gender identity, and there was a door decorating contest to which I, as a parent, was not prepared. And so, again, I'm pretty sure I'm a Tennessee resident. I don't think I can vote in local Virginia elections, but while I do not think that middle school is age appropriate for these matters, and for educators and staff who also participated, my son was asked if he was homophobic because he wasn't wearing an ally pin. It is my position that this isn't appropriate for middle school. He's 12, but if it is the opinion of the citizens of Virginia Beach and the school board that this is age appropriate, I would ask that
30
parent,
seconds.
thank you, that parents be given notification of what is going to happen and what their children may be exposed to, which did not happen in this case. 2, that the board would consider offering accommodation for parents and students who have, by matter of conscience or deeply held religious beliefs, that this is not appropriate and be allowed to keep their students home. That's all. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our last in-person speaker. We'll move to our online speakers. Speaker number 1 is not online, so speaker number 2, Elaine Lombardi, please unmute.
Good evening.
Religious beliefs, that this is not appropriate and be allowed to keep their students home. That's all. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our last in-person speaker. We'll move to our online speakers. Speaker number 1 is not online, so speaker number 2, Elaine Lombardi, please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry for that delay, Ms. Lombardi. Please proceed.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Good evening, Dr. Spence and school board members. As the man said in The Green Mile, I'm tired, boss, dog tired. Mostly, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of reading that some school board members, candidates, and others think they have a better idea what should be in our school libraries than trained, educated librarians do. A random website by a, quote, group of concerned parents, unquote, does not outweigh the expertise and experience of years of collective knowledge and the support of multiple professional organizations nationwide. I'll say it once again, louder for those in the back. If a parent wishes to censor what their child can check out of the library, that parent needs to stop reading selected snippets on the internet, get up, go to the school, and talk to the librarian to use the very simple process for censoring their own child's library access. I will also say once again that if that same parent has provided their child with a cell phone with internet access, they're just being hypocritical and making a public spectacle of themselves. Parents, that child already knows about the things you're trying to censor because you gave them access and you're paying for the privilege. Stop being ugly. I'm tired of school board members disrespecting teachers out of one side of their mouth and then pandering to us out of the other side. Our wonderful Virginia Beach schools are staffed by thousands of people who are exceptionally good at their job, including custodians, school nurses, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, aides, administrators, and a host of others. I'm very good at my job, but I could not do it without these other people. Pitting teachers against these teammates is blatant pandering and is especially distasteful after hearing and reading that you don't respect our professionalism or trust our judgment. Stop being ugly. I'm tired of people saying I'm indoctrinating students. If I, as a classroom teacher, could indoctrinate students, they'd all show up on time, put good effort into the assigned work, treat others with respect, and bathe regularly. Teachers in schools are not indoctrinating students. Stop it already. And when one of your followers says this, stop them. Stop being ugly. I'm tired of seeing my colleagues of all positions leaving VBCPS for better working conditions, better hours, better pay. You all discussed recruiting and retention in today's workshop. I've believed for years that there are no bad schools in Virginia Beach. We should be working to keep them this good. We can start with providing a 2% COLA for all staff, increase the higher education stipends to meet what other local districts are doing. Automatic career teacher allowances for all staff at 10 years with no hoops to jump through or lengthy applications, and a bonus for every 3 to 5 years beyond that 10. Health insurance with premiums that compare to neighboring districts. I'm confident that I speak for many when we say we love and respect this district, so please show us the respect we deserve and work as hard to offer adequate compensation as you are at trying to ban books. Stop being ugly. Thank you so much.
This time.
Thank
And
you.
Madam Chair, that was our last speaker for this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to the information portion of the agenda, and we begin this evening with our interim financial statements for May 2022. And welcome, Mr. Daniel Hopkins.
Hello, good evening. Sorry. Is this thing on? All right. I wasn't sure. Good evening. Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairman Melnick, school board members, Dr. Spence. As of May, the overall revenue trend remains acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. The Virginia Department of Education released the final fiscal year 2022 calculation template on June 22nd. Our revised projection of the state revenue is a deficit of approximately $5 million. What was adopted didn't change much from what was reported back in December. Key changes include an increase in sales tax of $14 million, but an offsetting decrease in basic aid of $12 million. A reduction of $5 million in the special ed regional tuition program for a change the state made. And the total overall state revenue is a deficit of $5 million. Federal revenues are showing favorable trend as of the end of May. We have received impact aid payments of approximately $14 million year to date. We have also received notice of the Medicaid cost report reimbursement for fiscal year end June 30th, 2021, and our school division share is $1.3 million. Other sources of revenue through the month are favorable at this point in the fiscal year, mainly due to the sale of capital assets and the revenues from the Stop Arm Enforcement Program. The next graph shows that the sales tax receipts are at a favorable level. Year to date through May, we are approximately $9 million higher than the same time last year. And the June sales tax receipts are coming in about $400,000 over the month of June last year. The last graph shows that the expenditures encumbrances trend remains acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. At this point, I'll take any questions.
Mrs. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. I have a question. I don't know if you'll have the answer to this one or one of our administrators. So just a question on one of the budget transfers, $17,000 to purchase PowerSchool add-on software for Schoology, but it was my understanding we're getting rid of Schoology, so I'm just curious why we're spending $17,000 on it.
Which line item was it?
It's page 6, batch entry 22-05-18. Page 6 on the transfers.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, so let's see here. Well, that one I might have to just get back with you. So it's $17,000 for the transfer of
Yeah, so we're getting rid of Schoology, but it says we're gonna purchase PowerSchool add-on software for Schoology in the amount of $17,000, so just,
All right, I'll have to look that one up for you.
okay, thank you. Thank you, that's all.
Okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
we thank you.
Oh, you know what? I leaned over to Dr. Spence while you were speaking. I didn't want you to think I was being rude, but I asked him how much money we got from the stop arm. And you don't, I think it was, I was surprised.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And do you know how much each ticket is? It's $250, but still the number was large. And that means a lot of people are not stopping for school buses, so that's okay. I mean, it's bad, but they're paying a price, and we're educating them. Yes, that's right. Yes.
If I may answer the question, so I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. So the additional money is to make sure that we provide teachers with access while we transition, so that they can move their materials over from Schoology to Canvas.
What's been a pilot program? Right, but this is an add-on software for PowerSchool.
This is going to allow our teachers to continue to have access to their materials that are in PowerSchool as they move them over to Canvas.
Yeah.
They have to be able to transfer their things. Right.
One
Makes
at a
sense.
time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mrs. Franklin.
Okay, I was trying to get my computer up, but, see if I can do this. I did have a question because I was looking at the remedial summer school. The estimated amount was $1,935 or 1,935, and we had quite a gain on that. I'm just curious because it looks like the gain was over 6,000% than what we originally estimated. Is that just an anomaly this year, or? I was trying to see what page that was.
B4, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's where it shows it as the 6,120% gain. I was just curious if that is just something that happened this year, or if that is just a real large underestimation of.
Well, I can tell you
That
the
line
budget
item.
is $1,935.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to ask the budget department, but they obviously did not think we're going to get a lot of remedial summer school tuition
Gotcha.
this year, but I would have to check with them
Okay.
to see exactly why.
Okay, and then if we get obviously sometimes we just don't know, right, what that's going to look like. What happens to those gains that we get on those type of underestimations? I'm just curious what happens with those kind of those
It all
funds.
goes back into the reversion
Oh, okay.
with all the
Okay.
other funds that we've received.
Okay, all right. And then, because I just saw a couple of line items like that, like the tuition for the regular day, the gen ed, those kind of things, just some big gains. So I was just curious how that's going to impact our budget next year.
Yeah,
So-
a lot of these local monies that are
Mm-hmm.
like small dollar amount, I mean, I'll be honest, it's probably not something that
Sure.
they focus a lot on.
Yeah.
Because, a 6,000% gain was, 116,000.
right,
but,
yeah. Yeah.
But I'll check into that for you.
Okay, well, I was just curious what happens to those monies that we
All right. It
underestimate
just goes into
like that.
reversion.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm just gonna, some of those numbers you see on the revenue, they do come through the calc tool from the state. So there are reporting periods, and it may be an off cycle where the numbers for enrollment were reported low at the time. Could be a result from COVID impact.
Sure.
And certainly we've had more robust summer school programs throughout the division. So I would say you're probably just seeing a little bit of that coming
Okay,
through as well.
okay. I was just trying to understand. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Good night. This brings us to information item B, our public-private education facilities and infrastructure update with Ms. Melissa Ingram, our Executive Director of Facility Services. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Spence.
I'm here today to provide you information on the proposed PPEA interim agreement, which we discussed starting negotiations for last time we were at workshop discussing this item. This proposed interim agreement is part of the PPA process, and the interim agreement would last roughly 1 year. If approved, next time we come back to you in August. The interim agreement is set out for the purpose of public input and design development for 3 schools listed in the CIP. We have also advertised the proposed interim agreement for a public hearing also occurring today. So again, as we last discussed in workshop form about 2 months ago, the RFP PPEA number 5083, Public-Private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act, which is the first phase of the process seeking conceptual and detailed proposals, has been completed. You can see on the screen the timeline that the board received in January of 2022, and we are currently at the blue line on this timeline. We had left the last workshop we had with you to begin negotiating an interim agreement with the preferred proposer and are here today to discuss the next step of the process, possible approval for the roughly year-long interim agreement. These activities would occur below the blue line and be comprised of public input and design development. No action is needed to be taken today. We will be back in August on a possible interim agreement for action to both the school board and city council. So again, just to recap again, what exactly is a PPA project? You may recall from our last information sessions with you, the PPA process is an alternate method of delivering infrastructure projects than the traditional design bid build process we're accustomed to employing. The PPA process is governed by the Code of Virginia and has been in effect for over 20 years, since 2002. It allows the public body to create public-private partnerships through contractual agreements for a wide range of public projects. Certain efficiencies are able to be gained with this method by having the contractor involved in the beginning of the design process. In response to the growth in the use of the PPA process throughout the Commonwealth, the school division also created its own policy setting forth guidelines for the PPA process in 2017, which is School Board Policy 3-71. Currently, we have 3 school replacement projects proposed in the Capital Improvement Program, recently approved by the school board and city council. They are as follows: Princess Anne High School replacement, CIP 1-105, 1-015, with a budget of $162.65 million. Williams Elementary School Bayside 6th grade replacement, CIP 1-028, with a budget of $68.3875 million. And Bayside High School replacement, CIP 1-029, with a budget of $197.7 million. These 3 CIP projects total over $428 million. Keep in mind as you look at these CIP projects that Princess Anne High School first appeared in the CIP in 2008, 2009, and at that point was budgeted for $105 million with a 2022 proposed completion date. Princess Anne High School is just now funded to be able to begin design almost 14 years later and almost $60 million more in budget due to moving the project back later in bid dates. This is an increase of roughly $4.3 million a year since the project first appeared in 08-09. So you can see from our proposed CIP schedule, the next 3 CIP schools we are discussing: Princess Anne High School, Williams Bayside 6th, and Bayside High School. These will all be roughly 70 years old when replaced. There are also 2 high schools in the queue for future replacement, which will be almost 80 years old as they are replaced. Further down the schedule, Independence Middle School is estimated to be over 100 years old when replaced, as is Lynn Haven Middle School. The proposed PPA process we're discussing today can help to keep our aging buildings on a more reliable replacement cycle. So information has been available on the vbschools.com website throughout this whole PPA process. Non-proprietary information is posted from both offerers throughout, as is the proposed interim agreement, with the opportunity for public hearing also beginning today. Again, the website is vbschools.com under Departments, Facility Services, and Current RFP. Two offerers, SB Ballard Construction Company and Heartland Construction, WM Jordan Construction, follow the process from conceptual to detailed offers, with the latest detailed proposals submitted in March 2022. The proposed interim agreement is also posted on the site for the public to be able to review at least 30 days prior to any action being taken by school board or city council. The VBCPS Review Committee has shortlisted SBCCC, SB Ballard Construction Company, for the interim agreement for the year-long design process and to work towards a comprehensive agreement for a GMP or guaranteed maximum price for construction. The proposed interim agreement is $15.4 million for roughly 12 months of design development work with public input. Deliverables for the interim agreement would be educational specifications, conceptual plans with building and site options, schematic designs, 30% design and engineering documents, and a GMP or guaranteed maximum price. If the interim agreement is successful, the school board can enter a comprehensive agreement with the offerer. With a comprehensive agreement, we would be looking at roughly 6 years of construction for the 3 replacement schools, should the comprehensive agreement be entered into. As a reminder, we will be coming back to the board in August for action on this interim agreement design phase. We would begin activities for design right away, which the offerer has already put work into at their own risk. Taking a look at the 3 CIP projects, you can see that the interim agreement is roughly $15.4 million of the total budget. This equates to 55% of the design budget and 3.6% of the total budget. It is important to note that also included in the interim agreement is a credit from the offerer for up to $500,000 for any cost reimbursement needs for Virginia Beach City Public Schools, should the division desire to hire consultants or services to aid with working towards a comprehensive agreement. Taking a look at the benefits of utilizing the PPA process as a method of delivering these 3 replacement projects, one large benefit is schools opening sooner. Roughly 1 year earlier for Princess Anne High School, 3 years earlier for Williams Elementary, Bayside 6th, and 2 years earlier for Bayside High School. This earlier opening of schools not only would benefit over 4,500 students and their learning environments, but also means an earlier bid date for construction services, which would result in cost savings tied to earlier completions of schools by avoiding several years of inflation costs for each project. The contractor and architectural engineering design team also helped to produce these cost savings, with the contractor being involved and having input from the beginning of the design process, creating efficiencies with both design and construction. With the cost per square foot of construction inflating roughly 4.8 to 5.6% a year historically, coupled with the current volatility of the market in respect to inflation and supply chain issues, through the PPA process, it is important to note that the contractor will be taking on shared risks for close to a decade with a guaranteed maximum price, which would be negotiated when entering into a comprehensive agreement. Being involved from the beginning of the process and sharing the risk while being contractually obligated to build quality buildings with criteria and expectations in terms of educational criteria, building performance, stormwater, utilities, and other design expectations set forth through the PPA RFP process, the team is in it for the long haul, benefiting from gained efficiencies in design and construction, a dual benefit for both parties in the agreement. Another benefit of the PPA process would be the establishment of a prototype high school for the next several high school replacements, with several learning communities and academy areas to be adapted to the next replacement high school specialties. By retaining ownership of the documents, the prototype plan will speed up the design process for those next schools as well, in order to utilize the prototype as a starting point of design. It is also important to discuss financial commitments. As with any CIP project, debt appropriated for the CIP will be used for funding of these replacement schools. This process commits to funding beyond the 6-year capital window, with funding not yet appropriated. A benefit to this process is that another source of financing is made available to leverage, which is the financing the private sector is able to secure for the public sector. In addition to use of public facility revenue bonds and of reversion funds to act as funding sources for these replacement projects, private financing can also be made available. The ability to use this private financing would be laid out in a comprehensive agreement to be negotiated and entered into in the final negotiation phase of the PPA process at the end of the interim agreement. Both school board and city council would have to approve for the ability for this private finance to be used if needed. So looking at our CIP projects, we have Princess Anne High School Replacement Project, which is fully funded in fiscal year 25 or in roughly 3 years. We would be employing our regular RFP process for architectural services in the more traditional design bid build process in about a year. This project was first seen in the 2008-2009 CIP roughly 14 years ago. Through the PPA process, Princess Anne High School is projected to be completed 1 year earlier than our traditional method, with a move-in projected to be fall 2026. The replacement school would have a capacity of 1,800 students, including the division's special education program at the high school level and the IB program. The school building would be approximately 330,000 square feet, with team sports building being roughly another 12,000 square feet. Students would be relocated to swing space during construction, with the building being built on the existing Princess Anne High School site. The second replacement school project in the current CIP, Betty F. Williams Elementary School Bayside 6th grade replacement, would house grades 4 through 5 from the Tri-Campus Elementary School attendance zone and 6th grade from the Bayside Middle School attendance zone. This project would be fully funded in fiscal year 27 or in roughly 5 years. We would be employing our regular RFP process for architectural services in the more conventional design bid build process in about 3 years. This project was first seen in the 2019 to 2020 CIP. Williams Elementary School Bayside 6th grade replacement project would be built on the current Williams Elementary School site, with students remaining in both existing buildings at William Elementary School and Bayside 6th grade campus on Jericho Road during construction. The replacement school is projected to be completed roughly 3 years earlier than our traditional method, with a move-in projected for fall 2025. The replacement school would have a capacity of 950 students with programmed elective space for the middle school program. The school building would be roughly 145,000 square feet and would serve grades 4, 5, and 6. When students move into the replacement building, Bayside 6th grade campus on Jericho Road would be vacated and could be declared as excess property by the school division. Williams Elementary School, the existing building, would also be demolished. Yes. Sure.
So we were wondering, is Betty F. Williams going to need a swing space?
No, ma'am. So Betty F. Williams, the 4th and 5th graders will stay at the existing school, and then the 6th graders will also stay at their existing campus at Jericho Road. Once the new building is complete at Williams Elementary School campus, adjacent to the existing building, both of those buildings will be demolished.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So the third replacement school project in the current CIP, Bayside High School School Replacement, has the majority of its funding sitting outside of the 6-year capital window, roughly 85% of the total $197.7 million budget, with funding beginning in fiscal year 26 or in roughly 4 years. This project was first seen in the 2021-22 CIP. As we experienced with Princess Anne High School, it is important to note that the further out of the 6-year window of the capital improvement program, the more likely the construction date could be continued to be pushed back for this project. Looking at Bayside High School replacement project, this school would also be built on the current Bayside High School site, with students relocated to swing space during construction. Through the PPA process, Bayside High School is projected to be completed 2 years earlier than our traditional method, with a move-in projected to be fall 2029. The replacement school would have a capacity of 1,900 students, including the division's Health Sciences Academy. The school building would be approximately 325,000 square feet, with team sports buildings being roughly another 12,000 square feet. And again, it's also important to note that after Bayside High School replacement project, we looked at the modernization program a little earlier. The next schools to begin construction would not be for over a decade. This is evidence of our need to find greater funding and efficiencies in replacing our school buildings, particularly as those built in the years of quick growth continue to age. The long-range facility master plan, last updated in 2017 with public input, assessed and prioritized school replacements and details the relationship between funding and keeping up with reinvesting in our facility assets. And so last, we're just taking a look also at Holland Road Annex Swing Space, which is the old Kellam High School on Holland Road. Again, this would be used as a swing space for both Princess Anne High School and Bayside High School, with Williams Elementary and Bayside 6th grade campus remaining in their own buildings. The swing space would house 2 school programs over the next roughly 7 years and be renovated and personalized to each school during their use of the facility. It would be renovated when a comprehensive agreement is entered into and house roughly 1,800 students from Princess Anne High School from roughly 2024 of January to September 2026. It would then house roughly 1,900 students from Bayside High School from fall 2026 to September 2029. And so where have we been in relation to this process? Last time we met, we took a look at this timeline as well. Again, just to recall, in June 2021, we received an unsolicited proposal for 3 replacement school projects. In August 2021, the school board authorized the superintendent to accept the unsolicited proposal. Per the PPA guidelines, a public solicitation for competing bids was advertised in October 2021. PPA request for conceptual phase proposals number 5083. In December 2021, we received 2 offers, one from SB Ballard Construction Company, as well as one from Heartland Jordan JV, both of which were accepted per the RFP criteria. Per the PPA guidelines, the school division then posted the PPA request for detailed phase proposals number 5083 in February 2022, with both offers again submitting detailed phase proposals in March 2022. In April, the PPA Review Committee received presentations from both offerers and shortlisted SB Ballard Construction Company in order to begin negotiating the interim agreement. So what's next on the horizon? We are here with you today to begin the opportunity for public comment through a formal public hearing and for information on the cost and deliverables for the interim agreement, which we've just discussed. The proposed interim agreement is currently posted publicly online, along with other components of the PPA process we've discussed. The proposed interim agreement will be posted online for 30 days prior to any action being taken place by school board and city council. We plan on also briefing city council on July 5th with the same presentation and returning to the school board for action on the interim agreement on August 9th. With the opportunity to go to City Council for action on August 16th. If approvals are granted for the interim agreement by both the school board and City Council, VBCPS project management team will work with SB Ballard Construction Company beginning in August 2022 to plan and schedule design charrettes and other stakeholder meetings. Educational specifications, conceptual plans, building and site options, schematic designs, and then 30% design and engineering documents for all 3 schools will be delivered to VBCPS from our PPA partner by late spring 2023. Through this process, staff will also negotiate a final comprehensive agreement for a final guaranteed maximum price for construction. This would conclude the interim agreement deliverables. The team would then review deliverables and seek approvals from both school board and city council to move forward with a comprehensive agreement for construction in late spring of 2023. If those approvals for a comprehensive agreement are obtained, notice to proceed for construction services would be granted and begin. So again, it's important to note, and we spoke about this last time, that the time and money spent during the roughly 1-year timeline of the interim agreement would not be wasted. We would undergo a similar public input process even with our more traditional method, and all of the drawings and documents would become the owner's property. So therefore, if we do not enter the comprehensive agreement, we're able to use all the work from the interim agreement for the more traditional method that we go through, not starting at square zero. So nothing would be wasted. So in closing, there are substantial benefits to continuing the pre-PA process for the school division. The proposed interim agreement for $15.4 million, again, 55% of the budgeted design work, is currently posted for public review on vbschools.com. We will also be briefing City Council with the same presentation next week, July 5th, and we will be back to school board on August 9th for action, followed by City Council August 16th. And then happy to answer.
So can you repeat again what is presently available online so everybody's clear on that, what is and what isn't?
Absolutely.
Because we did have one speaker tonight saying he was seeking details. So.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. So again, it's on vbschools.com. If you go to departments, facility services, and on the left-hand side, current RFPs, you can see all parts of the process that are non-proprietary. So from the unsolicited proposal to the conceptual design proposal, to the detailed proposal, and then to this interim agreement that we've negotiated. And again, these will be posted, the interim agreement will be posted online for at least 30 days prior to any action being taken, which currently is slated for August 9th.
So you said will be, so it's coming soon.
No, it's currently online right now.
So
Yes,
how
ma'am.
much more detailed, I mean, you give us the bullets here, so, but there is a fuller agreement available.
Yes, ma'am, it's the entire agreement. I believe it was also in the agenda packet behind this presentation. So it's the agreement in its entirety for people to review. Yes, ma'am. For the
So
public to review.
everybody's clear on that, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Manning. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Melnick.
Okay, so we would have a guaranteed max price, right? Okay, so right now the cost of materials is very high, but over the next couple of years, if that starts to settle back down, will we be able to renegotiate the price of materials for building these schools?
I don't believe so, no, ma'am. I can check on that and get back to you, though. However, what we've seen historically is annually our costs per square foot have inflated throughout the Commonwealth, not just in Virginia Beach. At the elementary school level, 4.8% up to 5.6%, as well as at the high school level.
So I get that, but right now, so even in anticipation of construction jobs, contractors are buying steel now because 6 months from now it might be double the price. But I would think that as we're weaning out of the effects from COVID, that these prices might start to, settle. So.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's definitely a volatile time right now. One of the benefits of the pre-PA process is just the fact that the contractor has that shared risk with us. One of the criteria we looked at for selecting contractual services with the preferred offerer was cost savings. So that was definitely at the forefront. And there are certain efficiencies, as you're saying, with going with this team for all three in terms of them being able to procure items when they were the most cost beneficial, store them, things of that nature, where we're having a lot of supply chain issues right now, which is really exacerbating our prices.
Okay, we'll just start with Ms. Owens. No? Okay. Mrs. Anderson.
So, I like the fact that the design could be utilized for First Colonial and Kempsville. I think, and it was Green Run.
Yes, ma'am.
But even before, I mean, is is that a given that it's gonna be those three high schools, or are we gonna skip some middle schools in between, or?
So again, I'll go back to the,
I know you said in
CIP
2017, we went to the public and we had public input on the priorities of,
Yes.
school
Yes, ma'am.
construction. Okay, I see that now.
So
That's
these are
probably
this
in
is
our
from the
bid.
CIP, which was just approved, and the school replacement projects are listed in priority from our long-range facility master plan.
Okay, I see that now. Okay, so it is, okay, First Colonial, Kempsville, Princess Anne Elementary. So I see those.
So,
On here.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
to your question, if you look at that list, Green Run High School isn't on it.
It's
Past
further-
all of the other schools that are on that list. So the answer is no, Green Run will not be built if this continues to be the case before any of those other schools that are built. But the next two that are on the list after the completion of Bayside High School are First Colonial and Kempsville. It
Okay.
just works out that way because if you recall during the long-range facilities planning discussion, the public prioritized replacing our high schools.
I understand that, and I do see this now. So it would be, Kempsville High School, then Princess Anne Elementary, Holland. I see that now. Thank you.
Absolutely, you're welcome.
Right. So Green Run, of course, being built it says here 1975. So.
That's
yeah.
Green Run Elementary School.
Oh, that's elementary.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So anyway,
And again, you can see, and one of the reasons we showed this as well is you can just see as time goes on, our buildings are aging and our funding is not keeping up with replacement. So we're looking at some aging buildings in the years to come.
so well, and just because I have a lot of people around my community asking about First Colonial, and they're pretty much on the same timeline as Bayside, so they were just wondering. But I realized that this came from the study that we did with the public in 2017, so.
Yes, and you can notice too, also from the slide, you can see our next construction date to start is not till 2039 for First Colonial High School. So over a decade away.
Yeah. Well, we need some more funding.
All right, we have
Chair-
Mrs. Manning and then Mrs. Franklin.
Chair
and
Ryan,
is
can
Mrs.
you
Weems?
just please add Ms. Weems
Okay.
to the queue?
Mrs. Manning, please
Okay, I have
proceed.
quite a few. If they take a while, I'll come back. First question, how many students are currently enrolled in Princess Anne and Bayside?
Princess Anne High School in Bayside, just under the 1,800 and 1,900 amount
Okay,
for
so,
capacity, yes, ma'am.
all right, so
Yep.
we're building basically to max capacity on
We're
those.
basically building, as a population, we're not growing. If we were in a big growth mode, we probably would have inflated that number a little bit more. But our current population is just south of those 1,800 and 1,900 figures that we're planning for.
Okay, why do you think we only received 2 bids?
I'm not sure, ma'am. It's definitely a large project, and we advertised it as need be. There definitely was interest in it, but it is a large project, so we had 2 offerers.
One concern that some in my community have brought to me is the concern that the students that were in trailers for the Thorogood Elementary School replacement will also be in swing space for Princess Anne High School. Has that been something that you've considered? Because, for example, like the current 5th graders, or the 5th graders that were in Thorogood when it was being built would be in high school by the time we are starting Princess Anne High School.
Possibly if they end up going to Princess Anne High School, yes, ma'am.
Okay, because that's been a big concern of people in our community. They started talking about it when they were in the trailers
Yes.
at Thorogood. So I know that that's something, so, probably have to talk with the community about that.
Absolutely.
So I looked at the state comparisons. Virginia Department of Education publicizes all of the schools that have been built, and I looked at last year's schools. And the high schools, same operating capacity. Actually, one of them is a higher operating capacity. Actually, both of them are higher operating capacities, and they're approximately double. Our schools are approximately double what these schools were just March 21 was when the contract was awarded. No, I'm sorry, the high schools, it was in 19. In the elementary school,
it's over double. The contract was just awarded in March of '21. I understand there's, significant cost increases, there's inflation, but I can't imagine that's all accounted for in this.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I think we were saying that it's having a double the cost. So
Or
we
more,
would need
yeah.
to see information. So nothing's been formally shared with us about a concern related to cost data. As you remember, a little bit over a year ago, we presented to you, and it was that presentation was based on concerns related to CIP. And one of the things there were several things that we talked about that were concerns related to that. And what it all kind of put it in a broader context is, are we making good use of taxpayer dollars? And discussing, are we building the right buildings for our need and our students? And when I shared the comparison data with you, the historical comparison, we were on par with the cost per square foot for the buildings that we were building. And so that chart goes there. So I would need more detail about the numbers that you're looking at and
Happy
do a
to share it.
comparison. So what we're presenting to you in the PPEA is a total cost. Often what's put on some sites is just a portion of the cost, like construction costs. It
This
doesn't
includes
include-
building and site costs.
Okay, and design and other things that go with it. So also that would get added into that in the detailed analysis we would do is, so we're talking about cost in the year that you're describing over what the projected cost is over time. So if you remember the inflation slide that we had, and we can share all this with you over time. We realize this is an information session tonight, and we need to prepare you to be able to make your best input when we come back to you for the action. So we'll provide you whatever is needed. So I'm just going to talk in terms of that brief that we received a long time ago. And this is what she mentioned in the brief, is that inflation rate. And we presented you two inflation rates. One was a straight line inflation rate that started in 2020, and then we also added a curved line which more accurately reflected the increase in inflation that occurred in roughly the mid-teens, I'll call it, so somewhere around the 2012, 2013, there was an increase in inflation. And as we kind of talked about earlier, even in COVID, that inflation rate is likely greater. We haven't put a percentage on it, but it's greater than what she described earlier tonight. So those all get taken into consideration when you're talking about putting these three projects that are together that would be extend out in the future. So those are all the numbers that we would need to have comparison to come back and share with you of here's how it would compare. But historically, our costs are similar to other buildings that are being built. And I'll also remind you that this is a one-time cost, and we're focused on life cycle costs of the building. So this isn't pertinent to this discussion here at the moment, but we are focused on life cycle costs of the buildings, not what just the at a single point in time what the building cost. So to answer your question, we're not going to be able to answer that one tonight, but we'll take the information that you have so that we can come back and provide more information in order to prepare everybody to make the best decision that they can based on data.
Thank you. So, I was excited when we had this opportunity because, oh, great, we can build 3 schools at once and move up our modernization of our schools, which is fantastic. But I was thinking, oh, well, this might save us some money. And when I'm looking at the comparisons that I'll give to you, it looks like that it's going to cost us a whole lot more money. And I understand we're in a period of inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. So, perhaps something the board needs to decide is that when we want to go under contract on building new schools? Hopefully that will change. Hopefully, I don't think we could sustain that.
So that is the purpose of a PPEA, is one of the benefits, and it was briefed as a cost savings over time. Now, I will tell you that when you start talking about these large dollar figures, it's daunting. Mm-hmm. It hits you up front. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be any better if you break it up into 3 different projects over a longer period of time over the number of years, which is what's currently in place. If the PPEA doesn't happen, it will be 3 separate projects in a design build format that's extended out over a long period of time, which historically inflation, that's where the savings is. It's related to the inflation piece over time. It's a projection. So, there was probably a projection that happened that was not correct for what I'll call the late 2000s because the market took a dip. That was another thing that we shared as part of the brief to you is a lot of the things that happen related to this are based on things that are not in the ability of the school board to control or facilities to control its market conditions. So what you're describing is we are in a market condition right now, which isn't as favorable as it was a couple of years ago. I'll put it in those terms. And how does that
kindly put.
play out, and how do we project that over time? And that's what we'll do our best to prepare you for what the future might look like when we know that we can't tell you exactly what it'll look like.
And there's one last question. What's the cost of the Holland renovation for the swing space?
We'll get you a number on what the breakout cost of that is, because I believe that's included as part of it.
That's included in
In the cost of the PPA as a whole.
in this 428 million?
Yes, ma'am, it would be included.
She said yes for anybody who couldn't hear that.
Okay. All right, yeah, if we could get the breakdown on that, I mean, that would be helpful. If it's included in, for example, the Bayside High School replacement, 197 million, if the swing space is included in there, I think it's important that we pull that out so we know the actual cost.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Franklin.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Freeman. So I just wanted to clarify, because you actually just shared some information on that as well. But so with these costs that you're providing to us, is that an all-inclusive cost? Because you had mentioned that sometimes, other schools will only provide the construction and the site cost, but not the all-inclusive cost. So are you telling us that this cost that we're seeing, the 425 million, that's an all-inclusive cost that includes design fees, furniture, fixtures, the whole thing?
And that is included in the guaranteed max price.
Yes, and which is still to be negotiated. So, yes, ma'am. So again, if, just recall the budgets that we're talking about were approved per the CIP this last budget cycle. So no budgets have changed at all as a result of the PPA process. And we have looked at market conditions. Princess Anne High School was first introduced a long time ago and has had to increase that budget due to inflationary reasons. So yes, when we go through the interim agreement, a lot of the guaranteed maximum price figures will be detailed out. What they would propose today would be different than they propose in 6 months from now, again, from public input and from their review of current market conditions. And they will itemize that in the guaranteed maximum price for us.
And I'm just saying, just for comparison purposes, though, what we see, let's just say online or something, you might not have that as a real apples to apples comparison. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. So we also, we have Princess Anne Middle School and Thurgood Elementary School are also in those lists for VDOE. And what VDOE itemizes is just the construction costs per the contract. They don't itemize the entire budget. So there's a lot of overhead costs, design costs, furniture, fixtures, and other things of that nature that are not included in the costs that you might see online for construction only.
Is there a way to, if we're really trying to accurately, do a comparison, is there ever a real way to be able to say, this is this cost, but they're excluding these fees that we need to also talk about? Just so we can kind of help ease some minds out there.
I would like to say yes. I would like to not say yes just to answer your question. I would like to say yes because that's what we do is we analyze and we're able to do that. The way that the data is collected and shared that is displayed on the site that we talked about earlier from BDOE, it's not that level of clarity.
Detail and clarity.
And after a conversation with somebody who works at BDOE, they're not going to be able to get to that level of clarity in those because we would really like to be able to have a extremely detailed comparison of not only that cost but the life cycle cost of the buildings and the way that it's constructed at this point in time. It's not there. I would like to see it improved over time.
Yeah, I just feel like it's kind of unfair. It's like we propose our budget for salary, and then all of a sudden, all these other divisions, we're putting out the information that is more accurate, I guess, or more detailed. And then, you know, I think it's just kind of an unfair analysis sometimes because we don't get the same. We're kind of open, you know, about our information, and it seems like maybe some other divisions might not be quite as
It would be helpful
forthcoming.
for us to know
Yeah.
as much detail about what
Yeah.
those other projects were across the state
Yeah.
so that we could have a fair comparison.
Right. Okay. So the answer is we're not really sure that we are getting an apples to apples comparison.
Yes, and we will do our best to fairly represent how they compare.
Okay.
With,
Thank you.
with what we know and what we don't know about the other sites.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
A piggyback to that, though, if I may, because we then have Mrs. Melnick, Mrs. Anderson. The staff would not have evaluated this in the first place if there wasn't if it was going to cost more. I mean, one of the reasons is to accelerate the pace, but the other reason is to save money. Those are the two goals, right?
Well, we have I think she has a slide in here that addressed all of the benefits. And so if you notice, if you remember back from the brief from a year and a half ago, a lot of the things that were shared in the brief that were concerns by the school board that we came back and we talked to you about, a lot of those things are addressed, which includes being able to have a prototype design as part of it. So there's a cost savings in it by moving them up. There's a delivery on an earlier cycle for the buildings. There's the opportunity to have a prototype design for the high schools that follow, which was one of the major concerns of the school board. And it shares it provides financing options where it shares risk with the developer.
Okay, Mrs. Melnick.
So if I may, through your help, maybe clarify a question that Mrs. Manning had. So anybody can submit a proposal, right? Correct. So in this case, SB Ballard submitted a proposal. They assumed risk. They put together a package. This is what they presented. And when they presented that, then our job was to open it up for anybody else who wanted to submit a proposal, correct? And what was the timeline for that?
Do you remember what the exact timeline was?
So after SB Ballard submitted theirs, it was open for how long? The period was open for?
So we received the unsolicited in June 2021, and then it was accepted in August 2021.
Okay, so between June,
No.
No.
I think the question
No.
is, once the board allowed us,
Accepted that.
acknowledged that we were gonna accept the proposal, we then posted it.
it's really,
And then there was a time frame during which folks could review that and then submit a proposal.
correct.
It looks like that time frame was from October to December.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in fairness, I think Mrs. Manning, X construction company had 2 months to put together a proposal, and that's a quick turnaround for this kind of work. So this was 3 schools, and that's a huge undertaking. And so WM Jordan did that. Also assumed risk in that and put together a project. But I think it's worth noting that it's not an easy undertaking when you're given 2 months, when we don't know how long the original submission took.
Right.
Well, so just as background, I hear you, and this is a concern that's been shared before. We presented and we stayed within our guidelines of the length of time that it was supposed to be open. We shared with you and made sure that we had school board authorization for how to proceed. We didn't get any requests to extend the timeline. And when we briefed you, we were very open to the challenge that was created or the concern that was there about, is this enough time? And we did not receive a request to extend the timeline, which if we had received one of those, I'm confident to say we would have reapproached you to say we had input that has asked us to extend this timeline. And I would have likely recommended that we would have extended the timeline just because this is so important. It's such a big project that we want to make sure that there are no barriers or perceived lack of transparency in how we're conducting those. So, in fairness, it is true that we only had two.
Okay.
But we didn't have any requests to extend the timeline to accommodate another.
So when those two were presented, were they able to do some value engineering?
So yes, ma'am, there's a lot of proprietary work that went in throughout the year-long interim agreement. We will see that guaranteed maximum price change and unchange, and they're going to be very transparent about that. I wanted to note as well, you can see there were two phases to the proposal, the first being conceptual. So it didn't need to be as detailed for people to submit to the first phase, and that's the reason it's designed that way. It's request for conceptual proposals, and then went to request for detailed proposals with additional information that we requested.
Okay.
So I hope that also answers your first question about if people had enough time.
Right.
Again,
Well, I don't want the public to think that we only allowed one proposal. So it was out there, and I think that's the point I was trying to make, was that, you know, it was extended to the community. Now, whether construction companies had the time to do what they needed to do, I don't know. And if they didn't ask for an extension, I don't know what to say. But I didn't want it to appear that it was just a single.
And I echo Mr. Freeman's comment about, you know, if we had received any requests for extensions, we would have certainly entertained that.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson and then Mrs. Weems.
So, you indicated that, Princess Anne, if they do move in 2026, the school will be 72 years old. So we need to emphasize to the public, because we've been getting, we got some emails recently that stated, why are we building schools? The population's going down. We're not increasing. Well, that's not the reason for building these schools. We need to emphasize to the public that these are replacements. It's not due to student population increasing. It's due to the fact that our buildings, our facilities are aging out. You know, I think 72 years is a long time to be able to replace a school, to get that much out of a school. Bayside, if they get to move in 2 years later, if that happens, they will be almost 65 years old. And First Colonial, down the road, you indicated it would be 10 more years, will be more than 70 years old for First Colonial. These schools, back when, because they said it'd be 10 more years. So these schools, back when we were building as fast as we could to keep up with population, I don't think were meant to be built for 75 and 80 years per school. We weren't, I mean, I'm not saying that they won't still be standing if we don't tear them down, but they sure won't be adequate educational facilities to do 21st century learning that our students are entitled to.
Absolutely. So the 21st century learning, the flexible spaces, that's one thing, but the other is the actual infrastructure of the building. So our electrical, our HVAC,
Right.
Our bones of the building, the structure itself,
Yeah.
are all in need of replacement. If we do it piecemeal at a time, you also see that in our CIP projects where we have projects just for HVAC and re-roof. It's really much more efficient to replace the whole building at one time and give the community a learning environment that will last.
Right. So the community needs to understand this, and I think this is our job, is to educate the community and let them know that this is the reason why we're replacing these schools. And we're in this shape that we're in right now because for a long time, the state used to give us extra money each year for replacements of schools, and that went away. We're not getting extra money now to replace schools. If the public wants to do something, they need to get on the horn and start letting legislators know that we need to have more funding to help replace schools, because it's falling on our community here, just in our locality, to be able to fund these things for our own. And it was said earlier this evening that one of the reasons why larger companies choose to come to Virginia Beach and locate here is because of our our world-class schools. But if we continue not building and we get behind as we are now, we're not going to continue to have world-class schools in Virginia Beach. So we don't want that to happen. We need to get on with this and start replacing these buildings. And you know, I feel like we're already behind, but at least this is a start. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like Mrs. Weems, you'll help us wrap up this discussion.
Yes, Ms. Wright, I took my hand down. It's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay. All right, last call, colleagues. All right, so we'll be having frequent discussions all summer long, it sounds like, on future agendas. So stay tuned, everybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now a course proposal, Spanish immersion elective, and welcome Dr. DeVries, our Director of K-12 and Gifted.
Thank you, Ms. Rye. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. I'm here this evening to present information regarding a new course proposal for middle school dual language immersion program held at Lansdowne Middle School and Great Neck Middle School. The proposed immersion course will be a semester-long elective course for immersion students who are interested in furthering their studies of the Spanish language and culture, as well as the role of media within the culture. The course is one step in a continued evolution of the VBCPS immersion program, in that it provides students with experiences outside of core content where they have traditionally experienced the immersion program. We propose for this course to be implemented at the 8th grade level at Great Neck Middle School next year, with plans to expand to Lansdowne Middle School the following year. The Spanish Immersion Elective, History, Culture, and Media course will provide students with an opportunity to further develop their Spanish proficiency in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Students will continue to develop not only their linguistic skills, but also cultural insight that together lead to global awareness. The knowledge and skills that students acquire in this course will reinforce and expand their learning in other subject areas, enable them to interact effectively with others, and give them increased access to information across the world. The course content aligns in particular with middle school social studies objectives and communicative literacy objectives in English 8. Each 9 weeks will be driven by a problem-based learning experience centered around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Students will develop global competency through an investigation of a significant question, problem, or challenge identified in local and/or global Spanish-speaking communities. The curriculum design for this course will focus on the 5 core strands of the 2021 World Language Standards of Learning, which are intercultural communication and connections, interpretive communication, interpersonal communication, presentational communication, and communicative literacy. Because this is an elective, students who choose not to take the class will still be part of the dual language immersion program through their Immersion Spanish 3 course in 8th grade. There's little to no anticipated budgeted costs for implementation of this course. The Department of Teaching and Learning staff will work to develop the curriculum, and there will be no textbook course costs associated with the course. Thank you for your consideration of this course proposal, and I welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, so did you say anyone can take this course, or these are the students who are part of the Spanish immersion
Correct.
program? So from Christopher Farms to Lansdowne, from
Yes.
Allenton to Great
Trentwood
Neck
to
Trentwood
Great Neck,
to Great
yes.
Neck. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And you said they can choose not to take it?
Correct, it's an elective, so
It's
if
just
they
an
choose to not take
Okay.
it, they would still be part of the program through their required course, which is their Immersion Spanish 3 course.
Okay.
So we can assume, when I read this, I mean, this is what I would expect of a foreign language course. I mean, when I think of my 4 years of French in high school, we covered this. So is it a fair assumption they are covering it, but this would be an elevated?
Correct, and mainly through the idea that it's project and problem-based learning, that we would be partnering with hopefully partnering with community organizations through our Latino community and having them work outside in the community as well, and learning through that way, more authentic problem and project-based learning opportunities.
So that's good to know. So something the present course wouldn't have, doesn't have embedded in it
The
for
present courses
time
have that to a
reasons or
degree,
whatever.
yeah, but this
Okay.
would be a distinct focus on that.
Ladies, are those just comments down there or any questions? All right, then we'll have you coming back with this next time, right? Thank you. So our Special Ed Advisory Committee report, the annual report every June. Welcome, Dr. Myers-Dopp.
Welcome. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. I have the privilege tonight to introduce Mrs. Dodie McGuire, who is the chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee, which is also known as SEAC. And she is here to provide a brief overview of SEAC's work this year, as well as recommendations for the 22-23 school year. And by state regulations, SEAC is charged with advising the school board about needs in the education of students with disabilities in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I also wanted to recognize that we have Megan Ashburn and Katie Alley, who are both SEAC members who are here to support the work as well as support Dodie in this presentation. So I'm now going to turn it over to Dodie.
And good evening to you. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronnie. Appreciate you. All right, we have this nice handy-dandy thing here, so I'll stay on task. The role and function of the SEAC is outlined in the regulations governing the education programs for students with disability in Virginia. Our primary functions are to participate in the development of priorities and strategies for meeting the needs of students with disabilities. Making recommendations regarding the education of students with disabilities, reviewing policies and procedures for the provision of special education and related services, and reviewing the school's division's annual plan. SEAC key activities and accomplishments, as you can see stated here, as required by the Virginia Department of Education and regulations governing special education for children with disabilities in Virginia, we reviewed the annual plan prior to submission to the school board and reviewed policies and provided input to the school board policy review committee. This slide highlights some of the other key areas and accomplishments of SEAC in 2021-2022. This is not all we did, though. I just want to make that clear. These are just highlights of what we accomplished this year. We've done a lot. We collaborated with and continue to collaborate with OPEC and FACE to develop special education empowerment series webinars. We developed an online resource repository using the Padlet platform with reference links to educators in the community. We secured a position, this is a very important one, by the way, on the VB PTA Executive Council. It is a voting position, by the way. Established regional SEAC quarterly meetings to learn and collaborate across school divisions in Hampton Roads, and attended and provided parent feedback at the assistant principal's training sessions at the beginning of the school year. Thank you, Ronnie. SEAC goals for the next school year will center around inclusive practices and transition, which specifically align to the work of OPEC as well as a strategic action agenda for the 2022-2023 and the Compass to 2025 goals. For the 2022 and 2023 school year, each school division is required to have in place a plan for improvement related to inclusive practices based on the division's self-assessment results. The goal is to improve outcomes for students with disabilities by meeting their needs to the maximum extent appropriate in the general education setting and providing access to non-academic and extracurricular activities. Included in this plan as part of the division's equity plan will emphasize the importance of inclusive practices and ensuring access to and belonging for students with disabilities. SEAC will focus on supporting parents and students in understanding inclusive practices and how these align to critical decision points at IEP meetings throughout the student's educational career. A recommendation. Propose schools work with OPEC to review school-specific data related to the least restrictive environment and identify ways to reduce the percentage of times students are served in a special education setting by improving inclusive practices. There will be continued work on transition planning and services which address the academic achievement and functional performance and skills of individual students to facilitate the movement from school to life after high school. SEAC will focus on supports to provide parents and as their children transition at other times during their educational career, such as ECSC, PK to kindergarten, elementary to middle, and middle to high. Recommendation, propose OPEC Explore additional resources to support transition as well as continue professional learning in this area. Please refer to the complete report in your package for more details. And may I add, we have an incredible group of parents and community folks who attend all of our SEAC meetings. We have lots of additional subcommittee meetings outside, so we spend many, many hours working on SEAC initiatives as well as volunteering in the special needs community on many other boards and community service projects. Yes.
Thank you for that closing remark. So, Mrs. Melnick.
So your group is incredible, and I am deeply grateful for the work that you do. And what I particularly love on here is just how much you're collaborating with the school system, and something keeps popping up in so much of what we've been doing lately, and that is the Family and Community Engagement Group, and just the work that that they're able. I mean, just working collaboratively and the stuff that they've been able to push out into the community is unbelievable. And in this report, I was particularly happy to see the video for facilitating successful IEP meetings. And we've talked a lot about different aspects in the school division and creating videos, and the fact that, yay, someone's coming through with one, because those are really helpful, right? I mean, a video is amazing. I was just telling Dr. Spence today, my son got a new something, and instead of reading the directions, he went to YouTube and watched a video. And I think that that's really where we're going, and it really helps to be able to see that. And so thank you. Thanks for all this work. And the Life After High School too. Great stuff.
That's a big one. Transition is huge. Right. I think we can all agree that the numbers of children with disabilities is not going down.
Right.
So putting in place some transition opportunities for them and allowing them to be a part of the community is super important to me and the SEAC and all the parents who are helping their children transition out of high school.
Yeah.
The video is an excellent opportunity for us to reach a lot of different community members, family members, teachers, administrators. I'm so excited about this. I don't know how excited I'm supposed to be up here, but I can't help myself.
There, you should be jumping up and down. It's great.
My son had an excellent IEP team this year. Mind-blowing, amazing, and I really appreciate the fact that Dr. O'Meara is getting a promotion, which he very much deserves, but he is an excellent leader at the IEP table, and he will be part of that video series that we're going to be doing. So we're very excited. It's something that is very important for people at the table, including parents, to see what an effective, respectful IEP meeting looks like. So thank you. We're really looking forward to that as well.
Okay, I see Ms. Owens and then Mrs. Manning.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I won't belabor with echoing Ms. Melnick on how thorough I thought this was. I did have one well, maybe two questions. I love that there's now regional SEAC meeting quarterly. Is that something that is open to the community, or is that just for SEAC members?
No, it's a public meeting, just like any other SEAC meeting is, open to the public. We just started this year, so it's, right now, we've only had we've only had SEAC members who have been participating, but it is our hope through our outreach program that we have Ms. Megan as our subcommittee chair. We have worked really hard post-COVID to really partner with the different schools and getting in with PTA and getting in with the other SEAC people in the area. Work smarter, not harder. There's a lot of great things that they're doing around the region and a lot of great things that we're doing around the region. So we want to share that and collaborate. So, but it is an open public meeting.
Wonderful. And if people in the community are interested in finding out when the meetings are being held and location and that kind of information, is that posted on school website? Would they need to get in contact? Is there a special SEAC site that they need to go to?
So we do post it at several different sites. We have a Facebook page that our outreach subcommittee is managing. We also have an Instagram account that we're getting up and running, Twitter account. We also advertise through OPEC at the different rec centers. We were using our teacher liaison from Thorogood Elementary, who's stepping down this year. She was posting information. Again, we are trying really hard to work with the Executive Council of PTAs to really do a grassroots effort. And I think that we are growing in numbers. We have a lot more parents this year, thanks to our outreach subcommittee. That is true. So we have.
Can you repeat that?
Sure, I can repeat it. I'm much louder than Megan, not really. We are establishing a Google Calendar that we can share on our Facebook page as well as on the website if the school approves it, where we will be sharing our meetings, our subcommittee meetings, our regional SEAC meetings, other activities where we will be representing SEAC, such as the July 4th Parks and Rec. I'm not really sure what they're calling it, but it's at Mount Trashmore. Again, collaborating with OPEC and FACE. It's been a great partnership to establish, well, OPEC, of course, was always partnering with SEAC, but FACE coming on board has been really great. So we'll have that, and also the Padlet that I mentioned earlier is an online resource that basically we took when we had we used to have a face-to-face resource fair in October. We had to stop that because of COVID. So we decided we needed to make sure that our community had resources. So we came up with a Padlet platform where community members and parents and other people can go get resources that are pulled from the school and from our community partners. And that link, I hope, is on the Virginia Beach City Public School website. And if it's not, I'd like to put a plug in. We'd like to get that there, if that's at all possible.
Absolutely. I think
Thank
it's wonderful for us to be getting that information out, because I think there's a lot of parents and family members, community members who can learn from, especially you have pulled together the different regions. And so I think that's excellent. The other thing that I will just comment on super briefly is that I'm excited to see kind of really intentional including, and we talked about it in our last equity meeting, making sure that we are being very intentional on inclusion in extracurricular activities for our special education population, our students with disabilities or who use special education services, not just being, I guess, open to that, but what are we doing to intentionally seek and invite and include and make sure that we have representation in all of our extracurricular activities. So I'm excited to see that really develop and be spelled out more clearly in our equity plans and just across the division. I'm excited. Thank you.
Me too.
Okay, Mrs. Manning.
Yeah, I concur with Ms. Owens regarding the extracurricular activities, and thank you, Ms. McGuire and Ms. Myers-Dobbs and the whole SEAC team, and Ms. Weems, who's been so involved. It's just amazing to see the partnership that the parents have with the administration, and that's so important. I think that's why we are heading in absolutely the right direction. I'm so glad to hear your experience with the IEP.
And thanks to, for the training of our administrators, I think that's been a huge step forward. And I also appreciate advocating for the least restrictive environment. I know that's so important to so many parents with students with special needs. But I also have friends who have students who are in self-contained classes, and that's what's working for them, and that's what they want. So this is not taking away from that. Just to clarify, this is just improving the least restrictive environment for those that's working for, correct?
Well, and also as part of inclusive practices, it's talking about the non-academic and the extracurricular opportunities too. So no matter what program a student is served in, it gives them that option to have more experiences with their non-disabled peers.
Great. Thank you so much.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
All right. So one of the other initiatives that we're working on this year, and we'll be working very closely with the Virginia Beach PTA Executive Council, we'll be meeting with them this summer, is a mentoring program that we would like to see atypical children being paired with neurotypical children, and we think peer-to-peer is a great way to go. And I know Great Neck Middle, I think Cox had a buddy program. So it's in the beginning stages, but that is something that we think will very much help children with disabilities become involved with afternoon activities as they really do integrate and become included with the entire school, which is the way it should be.
And we also looked at that as one of the strategies as part of the equity plan. So that's one of the things that Ms. Owens was talking about.
So you stole my thunder, but I did want to say the bullet because of my PTA background, I was delighted to see that about the position on the PTA Executive Council, the
Thank
townwide
Megan
council.
Megan Ashburn. Thank you.
And is that for next year, or was that did that begin this school year? Oh, wait, can you come up to the podium?
So we started the work for that this year sometime, getting in touch with the PTA council, and our plan is over the summer to basically infiltrate PTA at a school level, so that every school that has a PTA will also have a parent liaison, if you will, that will be like an intermediary between the SEAC and the schools.
I forgot that part. One of the most important parts. So that's what Megan is referring to, is that on each of the PTAs and within the schools, the actual schools, pardon me, we will have special education. We will have a liaison that sits, probably a parent, most likely, maybe a teacher. They do have one at Princess Anne Elementary, and we've met with their PTA, and that's a really valuable position they've noticed in including the child in the activities outside the classroom.
Okay, anybody else? Well, again, thank you to you and your entire advisory committee, and always to you.
Excuse me, Ms. Rye, I've had my hand raised.
I was waiting for you to intervene, Mrs. Weems.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
please.
I had it raised.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jody. You've done a wonderful job with this report, and just wonderful of my colleagues to make so many comments and ask questions so that you could really explain just, everything that y'all are doing. I mean, I'm so amazed. I have the honor of attending your meetings, and I have for years and years, but I'm just amazed with what y'all are doing now. You're just getting special education awareness in everything. Like you said, PTA, rec centers, parents, teachers, assistant principals. I mean, y'all are just everywhere. And folks, Dodie is very humble when she says that they're involved. You go to these meetings, and I think I'm a pretty busy person, but you sit around these tables and you hear what these members are doing, not only for our children here in Virginia Beach with special needs, but they're involved and on committees and presidents of committees and chairmen of all these different organizations. And it's just mind blowing how busy y'all are, but you still grind at it every day, and you're making things happen. So we appreciate you so much. I appreciate that y'all are targeting inclusion practices and transition, because a parent with a child who is now 30, who has gone through our system, and that was important then, and it's so important now. So I applaud you for targeting those two areas. Y'all are going to continue doing great things. I'm so excited. Thank you, Dodie, and for your leadership and for everybody on the committee. Y'all are just doing an awesome job. And again, we appreciate you so much. And I love how you're working with, FACE and OPEC. So let's continue the journey. We're doing great things.
I think that's a wonderful note to leave on. So thank you both. So now we switch gears to gifted education, information item D. We have Dr. DeVries. Hello again.
Good evening again. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Jennifer McKendry, who serves as the Gifted Community Advisory Committee Chair. Mrs. McKendry will highlight the work of the Gifted CAC this year, as well as recommendations for future work within the VBCPS Gifted Program that aligns to the VBCPS 2020 to 2025 local plan for the education of the gifted.
Hi, glad to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. DeVries. Good evening, School Board Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, School Board members, and Dr. Spence. As Dr. DeVries mentioned, I am Jennifer McKendry, Chairperson of the Community Advisory Committee for Gifted Education, or the CAC. I'm here this evening to present the Gifted Community Advisory Committee's annual report and recommendations. You will find your school board packet the complete report for your review. As a reminder, the 2020-2025 local plan for gifted education focuses on the 6 areas you see on this slide. Similar to the 2020-21 school year, site visits were not conducted by the CAC members due to COVID mitigations being in place for the majority of the year. However, the Gifted CAC continued to meet virtually, addressing a variety of topics, including identification and gifted assessment updates, an overview of the gifted dance and art programs, a parent workshop on executive functioning skills, and an overview of Title I. There was a panel in which the elementary, middle, and high school gifted resource teachers, or GRTs, ex officio members, 2 gifted cluster teachers, an additional high school GRT, and the 2 student ex officio members shared their experiences as part of the gifted program in response to questions posed by the voting CAC members. Based on discussions that took place this year during the Gifted CAC meetings and as a reflection of what has been presented to the CAC this year by the Gifted Leadership Team, GRTs, and students, the CAC presents the following recommendations aligned with the local plan for the education of the gifted. In the area of delivery of services, the CAC recommends to continue to support the building administrators in their support of the gifted program. Additionally, they recommend opportunities continued to be developed for gifted learners at the high school level. In the area of curriculum and instruction, the CAC recommends lessons be developed on executive functioning skills for each school level. There is also a recommendation to continue advocating for the implementation of rigor and gifted pedagogy in all gifted cluster classes. In the area of professional development and parent and community involvement, CAC recommendations include increasing training for gifted cluster teachers and GRTs and offering opportunities for workshops specifically designed for parents of gifted students. The final CAC recommendation addresses the area of staffing. The CAC recommends the school division allocates additional TEA staff to increase support for schools that have higher percentages of gifted learners, as well as for those schools that have unique programs, which result in a need for additional gifted cluster classrooms, such as the dual language immersion program. This concludes the recommendations from the Gifted Community Advisory Committee. We are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Just to be clear, you don't have, are there any board members here this evening?
No.
Okay.
Just
You'll
myself.
we do want to say thank you to them, and you'll pass
Absolutely.
that on for us. Okay. Ladies, Mrs. Franklin, our liaison.
I just want to say how much I love being a part of the committee meetings, and it's nice to actually see you in person.
I was thinking on my way here. I was like, yeah, I get to see her in person.
And so I just, one thing that I kind of wanted to go into more detail, I think it's important because we had talked about identification. And I think it's good to get a recap on things that we have done just in the last year and, and what we will continue to do as we move forward. Because I thought that was a very interesting discussion. I think it's important for people to understand.
Turn that over to Dr. DeVries.
So I believe it was a couple of years ago that, and perhaps before you were even on the school board, that we had a gift retreat conversation at the school board retreat about some measures that we were going to take to improve the gifted identification process and try to make it more equitable for students in order to have a more equitable representation across. So we began that journey and took some steps. Of course, COVID has been challenging, presented some challenges, but we were able to accomplish quite a bit. So the first thing we did was take a look at the recommendation of our consultant who has an expertise in the area of equitable identification, taking a look at our application process and our application as a whole, and simplifying it for parents. In addition to that, it was interesting that the SEAC chair was talking about videos because we made an intentional effort to ensure that we were providing on our gifted site a more simplistic version of how parents can access the application and information about our gifted programs, and we utilized videos to do that in both English and Spanish. In addition to that, we have created something called a performance-based task in order to provide another measure in a more authentic setting for students to show to potentially show their gifted characteristics. And so the gifted resource teacher engages first grade students in a task. And then the real power in the task is not the task itself, but is in the questions asked afterwards. And so they have some one-on-one discussion with those students after they complete the task about, why did you come up with the answer you came up with? Are there any possible solutions other than this? Are there any other ways to solve the problem? To kind of think about the thinking of the student. And our gifted identification committees have given feedback that they felt like that was really powerful, because there are some students who might not have scored necessarily as high as you would think on the COGAT or our gifted identification testing measures, but then you see what they've actually accomplished on a task, and they pop. And so it's just another way. So we've been really focusing on alternative ways that students can show their abilities, and we can really bring out and enhance those gifted characteristics by front loading some of those experiences for them.
That really parallels, for me anyway, the alternative assessments in in just our regular classrooms, right?
Yeah,
Alternative
absolutely.
ways to
Right.
evaluate
And thinking
whether
about
we're
that, it's a
talking
pool-
identification
correct,
or
absolutely.
achievement or.
Yep.
Mrs. Melnick.
Dr. DeVries, can you tell me what the gifted temporary employment agreement is, and do we do it now? Do we have?
So that's a division. A TEA is a temporary employment agreement, and that is a position that we hire annually, and they are part-time employees. They don't receive benefits. They typically work 29 hours a week or less, and we have them all over the division, anywhere from our reading buses to our gifted. We have ESL, TEAs as well. So they're all across the division. How we use them in the gifted programs is to supplement our instruction and our services that we provide for gifted students at schools that have really high populations of gifted students. So, for example, Princess Anne Elementary School has a really big gifted population, so they have a full-time GRT, plus they have a TEA that comes in
I
weekly.
didn't even know that. Okay. I'd never heard that term. Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? All right, we thank you so much for all the effort, especially the challenges during COVID, and to know that didn't lose a beat really. So, but great to be back in the classrooms next year. Yes. Okay. Okay. Our final information item of the evening is the policy review recommendations to be offered by Mrs. Linetti, our counsel.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, school board members, and Dr. Spence. On behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'll be presenting the recommendations from the meeting from June 9th of 2022. There are 8 policies and bylaws that we're going to be presenting tonight. First one is bylaw 143, board minutes and recording votes and extensions. There was an amendment to the Freedom of Information Act this year, and again, as we've mentioned, we've been going through the new acts, trying to catch up your policies and regulations, make sure they're in compliance. We are going to recommend that you add a section C that will be posting minutes, and it will read: the minutes of the school board meeting shall be posted on the school board's website within 7 working days of final approval of the minutes. Again, you do have the procedure for posting on there. That's not been an issue for us, but that is a new requirement for us, so we just went ahead and codified it for you, but that would not be a change in procedure for you. And there are a couple minor Scrivener changes. Are there any questions on bylaw 143?
Mrs. Hughes.
Yes, two. In the area where it says tape recordings, should this not be unedited tape recordings? I noticed some of them seem heavily edited.
I'm sorry, are you saying B1, is that extensions, B1 tape
Yes.
recordings?
Yes.
Proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be tape recorded or videotaped in separate and closed meetings. Such tapes will be stored for current year plus 5. Is that what you're talking about? And what is it you're asking? I'm
So
sorry.
it says videotaped, but they're clearly edited, like things are edited out, which is not a full record of the meeting. Should these not be unedited videotapes put out? Yeah, there's plenty of stuff cut out. I've seen speakers cut out. I've seen where somebody was yelling at someone and you could see the person, but there was all of a sudden no volume, and as soon as that was over, the volume came back. These should actually be unedited, should they not?
Are you talking about formal meetings of the board?
Yeah.
No, there's no editing. That's
There
done
is
by
some
VB
editing. There are some
There's
things
no
missing
editing. This is done by
sometimes.
VBTV and they don't edit it.
That's actually not true. I've seen speakers come up one after another and look down the list, and some speakers were cut out, things like that during the meeting. So these actually should be unedited. That should actually be part of the policy.
So that's just your opinion.
Well, it's not my
There is
opinion.
there is
If
no
you have
editing.
15 speakers on your list and 15 people spoke and I've got them checked off, and then I go back and look at the video and you can see 12 of them, that's not my opinion, that's a fact. It was edited.
Well, we can establish it could be a matter of where maybe the camera is focused, but it's clear that that's not the intent or the protocol, correct, Mrs. Linetti?
Under the Public Records Act, we should be keeping appropriate, but without pointing out which ones you're talking about, I can't verify what's going on.
So can we put language in here that says they will be unedited videotapes?
I would suggest we probably need to have a legal discussion about that. If you use profanity in the boardroom, it does have to be edited because it can't be put online, or else we have an issue with other regulations.
There are FCC regulations and things that can apply to some of this information, so I would have to look at what it was you were suggesting we were editing or not editing to make a decision on. As we can point out specific examples, we can look at it and verify what's going on.
I wouldn't have any problem with unedited with the exception of as required by law, but the rest
Are
of
you
it should be in
suggesting
there.
an amendment then to, it looks like would be Section B, extensions 1, tape recordings, and I believe you're suggesting that proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be tape recorded or videotaped, and unedited unless required to be by law?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that it? Again, I'm not sure if you're proposing an amendment to this bylaw. All right, school board members, I think what Mrs. Hughes is suggesting is that under section B1, so extension, section 1, tape recordings, proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be tape recorded or videotaped And I'm guessing you're saying unedited and unedited unless required, unless otherwise required by law. Again, so let me read it one more time for you. Proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be tape recorded or videotaped and unedited unless otherwise required by law, except in enclosed meetings. Sort of a long sentence.
Ms.
Owens.
Just one more. Yeah, just under C, I'm just curious, where does the final approval of the minutes come from?
You, like you did earlier tonight, you approved the meeting minutes.
Okay, so this is not giving us the minutes for us to approve of at the meeting.
No, it's
Okay.
assumed, obviously, it's when you come back, when it comes back before your board. Like, if you approve tonight, you have 7 days to get it up online.
Okay, all right, I didn't know if it was just for us to review, like part of our agenda packet. I wasn't sure which, okay, thanks.
No, Freedom of Information wouldn't talk about how quick it gets back to the board. It would talk about when it's available to the public, so that's after you approve it.
Okay, my question on that bylaw about recording, is it possible we could use the phrasing audio and video recording instead of tape recording? I know that we update these every 10 years or something, and
Right.
really the term tape recording isn't actually a thing anymore. And so I just feel like it would be more accurate, especially if we're not going to look at this again until 2030.
True. Okay. Yeah, that's, how do you?
We don't have a video.
All right, let me try one more time.
Player anymore.
So Mrs. Owens would suggest that it would read, proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be audio, videotaped, and unedited unless otherwise required by law when in closed meetings. That was how that first sentence would read.
Really recorded, not taped. It's the tape thing that doesn't really exist anymore. They're recorded, but it might
Recorded.
be a MP3, however it's recorded. And I think the title of that section, if it can just say audio and video
Record, yeah.
recordings rather than
Just might
tapes.
say recordings.
Yeah.
And then in the next sentence, instead of saying such tapes, it would be such recordings.
Okay, one more time. B, extensions. 1, recordings would be the new title. Would read, proceedings of all business meetings of the school board shall be recorded and unedited unless otherwise required by law, except when in closed session. Such recordings shall be stored for the current year plus 5 years.
Okay.
Hold on, sorry, I'm gonna look at the next one, the next paragraph, make sure we don't have recordings over there. All right, I think you do not need to change the next paragraph, so.
No, it's okay.
So what you have on the floor is Mrs. Hughes has made an offer, and Mrs. Owens appears to be making a friendly amendment to that.
What's information, so.
So,
It's just information.
Do you want to come back like this, or do you want to come back to PRC?
No, I think it's good.
With that language, bring it back, and then we'll rewrite it and send it back to you before the next meeting. Okay. The next one is policy 384. This is school lunch and breakfast program generally. You'll say, why? We just did this. You did in May. However, as going through the checking the law came out in the General Assembly and some of the federal law that came out, we needed to add another line to it. So again, you have in subsection D, unpaid meal charges. There have been a lot of changes to this at the state level for that. What we're going to recommend is the final sentence that would read, no student may be denied the opportunity to participate in any extracurricular school activity because the student cannot pay for a meal at school or owes a school meal debt. And then we're going to note there's a reference to where you can find reference to some of these policies and regulations in the Office of Food Services Operational Manual. This was a requirement added to the one of the sections in the state code having to do with school meals. This has not been your practice to ever prevent a student from doing this. Again, I'm assuming this happened at some other school division. It's now the law. However, to make sure you're compliant with the law, we've gone ahead and recommended amending this particular policy to reflect that requirement. Are there any questions on this policy? Hearing no questions on this policy, we're going to go to 387, free and reduced lunch prices. This is not one that you have looked at in a couple of years. last time we looked at it was 2014. So there's some minor changes on here. In section A, we're recommending changing the language. Instead of refer to federal programs, we will refer to the school breakfast program and national school lunch program. In section B, this was a new requirement this year in the General Assembly, so we had to go ahead and add this in. So this is the application process. The school board further approves of prominently posting on its website a web-based application with the purpose of collecting information to determine student free and reduced lunch price meal eligibility. School board shall also continue to provide paper-based applications. All web-based and paper-based applications shall be processed within 6 working days after the date of receipt of the completed applications. Again, new requirement, you'll see the citation in the legal reference. And then we had to renumber those particular paragraphs. So those are recommended changes to policy 387. Are there any questions on 387? Hearing no questions on 387, we're going to move on to 616. 616 is in your instruction section. This has to do with ceremonies and observances. When, again, just a normal checking, following up on the policies and regulations that need to be reviewed every 5 years. We were looking at section 6 again, and checking back on that, we decided we needed to update some of the language. These are actually not new state law requirements. They've always been in the state law. It just wasn't included in our policy. So in section B, which has to do with flags, we've added a second sentence that would read, instruction in the history and principles of the flag of the United States and the flag of the Commonwealth shall be given in 1 or more grades. The instruction shall include the Pledge of Allegiance and the appropriate etiquette and conventions for respecting the dignity and appropriate display of such flags. Again, not a new state requirement, it simply was not included in our policy. See some minor scrivener changes that appear again down on section E, which has to do with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you see on the second page, there's a pretty long sentence coming in there, but we're recommending a couple scrivener changes on there, and then we're going to add to the final sentence, we'll be adding the Office of the Attorney General shall intervene on behalf of the school board and shall provide legal defense of this particular law. Again, not a new requirement by law, it just hasn't been in our policy before. And then a couple minor scrivener changes you'll see throughout the rest of the paragraphs and the legal references. Are there any questions about policy 616? Hearing no questions about policy 616, we will look to policy 618, instructional time and importance and impact review. Again, this is last time we looked at this was 2008. So there are just basically scrivener changes. You'll see a couple scrivener changes up in the top 2 paragraphs, and first paragraph and the third paragraph, and updating some of the legal references. Other than that, there are no significant changes to this policy. Are there any questions on policy 618? Hearing no questions on policy 618, we will move on to policy 627, which is alternative education. Minor scrivener changes here involving a couple grammatical issues and updating the legal references. Other than that, there are no recommended changes to policy 627, alternative education. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, I will move on to policy 7-3, which is access to records. This is a significant change being added to section B, fee for search and time and copying. This is essentially your free information requests on there. Again, this is new legislation that came out this year. This is an issue that frequently comes up when we're handling free information requests. So the additional language would read, the school division shall make all reasonable efforts to supply the requested records at the lowest possible cost. Prior to conducting a search of records, the school division shall notify the requester in writing that the public body may make reasonable charges not to exceed the actual cost incurred in accessing, duplicating, supplying, or searching for requested records, and inquire the requester whether the requester would like the request at a cost estimate in advance of supplying the requested records. The school division shall provide the requester with a cost estimate if requested. The period within which the school division shall respond shall be told for the amount of time that elapses between notice of the cost estimate and the response of the requester. If the school division receives no response from the requester within 30 days of sending the cost estimate, the request will be deemed to be withdrawn. Any costs incurred by the school division in estimating the cost of supplying the requested records shall be applied to the overall charge to be paid by the requester for supplying of the requested records. That sounds like a lot to take in. It is a frequent issue for us in handling free information requests, particularly very large free information requests, because of the short time periods. We often incur a lot of expenses trying to get this, and then the individual doesn't want it or is not willing to pay for it. This allows us a little bit more flexibility in managing that, so we're not using division resources for something that is not going to get paid for and not wanted in the end. So this is simply codifying something that a number of local government and state government agencies proposed needed to be changed to law. Yeah, are there any questions to that particular change?
Just one. So one thing that's not in here that I know is in the Freedom of Information Act, and maybe we have it somewhere else, but if documents have been previously produced, charges will not apply.
I don't think Freedom of Information Act requires that. What happens in that case, it's the cost of researching. So if you have previously created the documents that are available on there, then it wouldn't cost you as much to research. You wouldn't duplicate the search time because you have a document already prepared. So the cost of preparing that comes in there. I believe that does show up in some of our regulations, but it is not spelled out in the extent that you're saying on there. So what we should not be doing is charging, duplicating search time. If the second time it gets requested, we don't do that. You'll see what the city has, an online FOIA request, but a lot of times they will post FOIA requests on it. It's a pretty expensive system that they have. But that way individuals can go and look for the information that's been requested prior to that. But similarly, if you called and I had previously provided that to somebody last week, I would simply copy what we sent or copy a disk and give it to you, and I would not then charge you. So unfortunately, sometimes the initial person making the request bears the burden of and the cost, and other people may benefit from somebody who hadn't requested that before. That is the practice that we follow. I don't know if it's spelled in any of our regulations. I'm not sure if that's specific.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just suggesting that perhaps we spell it out since it's already our practice.
I'll work with Mr. Sutton, maybe see if it's in the regulations on there. Again, we would not charge for search time if we didn't actually incur search time the second time doing that. In policy 712, complaints from the public, challenge and controversial materials, the recommendation is to add a second paragraph that would read Regulation 661.1 and 662. 661.2 governs the procedures to challenge materials for parents, legal guardians, and adult students. Regulation 7-12.1 governs the procedures to challenge materials for citizens without children currently enrolled in the school division, and they will be pulling out the reference to the editor's notes here. After much discussion about that, we thought that would be clarifying the difference in how you handle the challenges for complaints from the public on challenge materials. Are there any questions about that policy recommendation?
Yeah, I just have one. I know that there was a law just passed that's going to require us to abide by some regulations on this topic. Are we going to revisit it?
We can't until VDOE has till I think August to produce a guidance model. And if you remember what happened when we were doing transgender, that got tied up for a while. So we have to be in compliance with that policy that comes out. So when that comes out, we'll look at it.
Revisit this then.
Right.
Okay.
We haven't seen that yet though
Thank
from
you.
VDOE.
And just a reminder too, that we have that topic on the first quarter forecast because we recognize that law's coming out.
Yeah, we're waiting for guidance from VDOE on that. At this time, that would be all the policy recommendations that are on the information agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Linetti, and our hardworking Policy Review Committee. All right, so now that brings us to the consent agenda. We have, I believe, one item tonight. Recommendation of general contractor for the Holland Road Annex temporary swing space office facilities. Motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin and a second, Mrs. Riggs. All in favor, show a raised hand.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote? Ms. Weems, how do you vote on the consent agenda item?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes.
And I'm going to abstain. I checked with my husband just a few minutes ago. It's a company we did business with, or did a job with a long time ago, but just to be safe, I will abstain.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes, no nays, and 1 abstention, so the motion did pass.
Okay, so now that leads us to why we have new faces here in the audience. So we begin the action portion of the agenda with our personnel report and administrative appointments. So, motion to approve? Mrs. Melnick, and a second. Mrs. Anderson, any discussion? Everybody's hearing none. Everybody who approves, show a raised hand.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. So now, Dr. Spence, as it always is your pleasure to announce your administrative appointments.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to draw attention first to Patrick O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill is not with us this evening. He's attending virtually, but he has served as a teacher in Williamsburg, James City County, and in Norfolk and Portsmouth. He's been an assistant principal and principal in Portsmouth, and most recently has been serving as an assistant principal at King Middle School and Franklin Public Schools. Served in that position. Most recently has been serving as an assistant principal at Samuel Morton Elementary School in Franklin. We're pleased this evening you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as next assistant principal at Newtown and Betty F. Williams Elementary School. So congratulations to him. Also attending virtually this evening is Julie Braley. She has an extensive background in marketing and management, and has worked as a teleconferencing specialist, marketing and business relations director, the executive director of the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Most recently has been serving as public relations and content manager for Virginia Beach Parks and Recreation. We're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next coordinator of Public Relations 3 in Department of Communications and Community Engagement. So congratulations to her. I would like to ask Bruce Ensman to please stand up. So you all will certainly recognize Bruce. He served as a teacher in Williamsburg, Virginia. He's also been a teacher at Green Run High School, Ocean Lake High School, has been an assistant principal at Salem, Lansdowne High School, as well as Lynn Haven Middle and Plaza Middle. He's currently serving as an assistant principal at Brandon Middle School. We're pleased this evening you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as the next coordinator for virtual learning in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Congratulations. And you have some guests with you. Would you like to introduce them?
I'm here with my wife, Stephanie.
Please stand.
My son, Bruce. My son, Cole. And my daughter, Mary.
Very nice.
And I think my parents are watching online.
Excellent. Also attending the meeting virtually this evening is Dr. Renee Martinez. Dr. Martinez has served as a teacher in New Jersey and in North Carolina. She has been an assistant principal in North Carolina, also serves as an adjunct professor at Regent University. She's been a literacy instructional coach at Bayside 6th grade campus. Most recently has been an instructional specialist in the Department of Teaching and Learning, and we're pleased this evening that you accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next coordinator of secondary language arts in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Congratulations to her. If I could ask Valerie Poling to please stand up. Valerie Poling has served as a teacher at Holland Elementary School, assistant principal currently at Holland Elementary School. We're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as a human resources specialist in the Department of Human Resources. Congratulations. And do you have guests with you?
I have my husband, Craig. I have my best friend, K-Star. I have my friend, Heidi Richardson. And my principal and my friend, and the biggest supporter, Dr. Richardson.
Oh, very nice.
If I could ask Christopher Way to please stand up. Mr. Way has served as GIS and imagery analyst, as well as a cartographer with the Virginia Department of Transportation. Most recently has been serving as GIS coordinator for the County of Shenandoah. And we're quite pleased that he has agreed to come join us in Virginia Beach as a demographer and GIS manager in the Office of Facility Services. Thank you. Congratulations. I could ask Tasha Warren to please stand up. So you all will recognize Tasha. She has served as a teacher in Newport News and in North Carolina, Prince William County, also in Colorado. She has been an administrative assistant at Bayside Middle School, a teacher at Princess Anne Middle School. Most recently is serving as assistant principal at Brandon Middle School. We're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as coordinator of business information technology in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Congratulations. And I think you have a guest with you. Congratulations. And then finally, also attending the meeting virtually this evening, we want to recognize Tiffany Young. Miss Young has served as a curriculum assistant, a teacher in Washington. She's been a teacher in Illinois. She's been an adjunct instructor at several universities, has been served also as a training and curriculum specialist in the Department of the Navy, and then here in Virginia Beach as a teacher at Bayside High School, Bayside Middle School, then as an administrative assistant recently at Bayside Middle School, and then also a teacher retention liaison most recently in the Department of Human Resources. We're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as a human resources specialist in the Department of Human Resources. Congratulations to her. And that is it. So congratulations to all of our administrative appointments and also to their families. And thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate you and appreciate you lending your family members to us for this work.
On behalf of my colleagues, we wish you all success in your new positions. We're here to support you. So action item B, we have one policy. Mrs. Linetti, do you just want to give a quick recap? Well, first, a motion to approve, motion to approve policy 612 school calendar. Mrs. Riggs, a second. Mrs. Anderson.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Spence, you remember the PRC had recommended this policy come forward once before. We brought it back at the superintendent and school administration's request. They wanted to take a little bit more a look at it on there. I don't think we've made any significant changes since the last time we wanted to reconsider it. After reconsidering it, they decided to leave the language as the way it is. So you'll see there's a minor change that we put in the first paragraph, which is a school calendar shall be prepared at least annually, knowing that sometimes we have to alter them during the year. And then you see they're recommending that we take out in the final paragraph, the final sentence that starts with including, and we just left it at this, that the staff will be determined by the superintendent. After review, it was determined there was not going to be need to further amend this particular policy. Are there any other questions about this policy?
Okay, then, everybody in favor, show a raised hand.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. Action item C is the school board committee and liaison assignment recommendations. And before I ask for a motion to approve, and then I'll read through it, there is one adjustment. Help me with where it is. So it's section, outside organizations, the Human Rights Commission, which presently has Jennifer Franklin listed with Dottie Holtz as alternate. Due to some scheduling conflicts with Mrs. Franklin, the two of them have agreed to switch roles. So the adjustment would be Dottie Holtz as our liaison with Mrs. Franklin serving as the alternate. So with that, motion to approve and a second, Mrs. Franklin, a second, Mrs. Holtz. So I'm going to read through this quickly. So internal audit, Jennifer Franklin, Kimberly Melnick, Jessica Owens, and Larry Davenport, our citizen member who has served for many years and has agreed to do so again. Policy Review Committee, Beverly Anderson, Laura Hughes, Trinace Riggs. Planning and Performance Monitoring, Beverly Anderson, Sharon Felton, Jennifer Franklin. Governance, myself as school board chair and Mrs. Anderson is the appointed position, and the other three, audit chair, PPM chair, and PRC chair, will be determined when these committees meet after July 1. Legislative, Sharon Felton, Victoria Manning, Trinace Riggs. BU Building Utilization, Laura Hughes, Dottie Holtz, and alternate Carolyn Weems. Oh, no, I don't think. Is it? Okay, I beg your pardon. Okay, and Carolyn Weems. Student discipline, these committees remained intact. Disciplinary Committee 1 meets the second and fourth Monday of the month at 3 p.m. Sharon Felton, Jennifer Franklin, Laura Hughes. Committee 2, Disciplinary Committee 2 meets the first and second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. Victoria Manning, Jessica Hughes, Carolyn Weems, and what did I say? Yes. What? And Disciplinary Committee 3 meeting the first and third Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Beverly Anderson, Dottie Holtz, Trinace Riggs. And I should comment too, these asterisks are present committee chairs. That too will be, as previously stated, would be determined after July 1. But in the CIP Modernization Review Committee, Dottie Holtz, Victoria Manning, and Beverly Anderson as alternate. The in-house pharmacy exploratory committee, we still have, and we're seeking, the clerk has reached out, yes, Madam Clerk, for information from your city council counterpart on the status of this.
That is correct. I have not heard back
But for
yet.
now, we are, it's Kimberly Melnick and Trinace Riggs were originally approved, and at such time that we determine whether it's official, what the official status is, we'll come back to you. Now we get into the category of school division standing committees with school board members and/or liaisons. We have Equity Council, and we have Jessica Owens and Kimberly Melnick with Dottie Holtz as alternate. The 403B Plan Oversight Committee, Victoria Manning. And now our outside organizations. And I'll read this out loud. The school board chair will recommend and the school board will approve school board members to represent the school board on outside organizations. In those instances, school board members have authority to bind the school board for the limited purpose for which the outside committee allows. This really gives us the opportunity to be out there in the community. So the Green Run Collegiate Charter Board, we have Kimberly Melnick with Jennifer Franklin as alternate. The Governor's School for the Arts, Kimberly Melnick with Beverly Anderson as alternate. The Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities, Victoria Manning and Trinace Riggs as alternate. Southeast Cooperative Educational Programs known as CSEP, Kimberly Melnick. And it's been noted that this is tied in with the Governor's School in terms of the meetings. One succeeds the other each month, and most of the divisions have the same person serving both roles. The VSBA voting delegate for the annual convention in November in Williamsburg, Trinace Riggs with Dottie Holtz as alternate. I'll just say the WHRO Educational Advisory Committee, Dottie Holtz with Jennifer Franklin as alternate. The Sister Cities Association of Virginia Beach, Trinace Riggs with Beverly Anderson as alternate. The 457 Deferred Compensation Board, Beverly Anderson. And the Virginia Beach Human Rights Commission, as was previously noted, Dottie Holtz with Jennifer Franklin as alternate. And then finally, we have the Citizen Advisory Committees, and which is set forth in Policy 721, and we heard from two tonight. B1 is the Special Ed Advisory Committee, Carolyn Weems with Jennifer Franklin as alternate. B2, General Advisory Council for Technical and Career Education, Sharon Felton with Jennifer Franklin as alternate. The Community Advisory Committee for Gifted Education, Jennifer Franklin with Laura Hughes as alternate. The Adult Basic Education Advisory Committee is Laura Hughes with Dottie Holtz as alternate. The School Health Advisory Committee is Victoria Manning with Laura Hughes as alternate. And finally, we adjusted this, very minor adjustment, this addition this year, but I thought it was important to add the Virginia Beach Education Foundation to acknowledge its rightful place here with these other groups, and it is, the school board chair serves ex officio, but that's now recognized officially in this document. So with that, any discussion?
Ms. Rye,
Yes, Mrs. Weems?
I think in the past, the BUC committee has had 3 members with no alternates. Has that been changed, or am I mistaken? I believe I was one of the 3 members last year.
Yes, that was I paused with that, but I was corrected here, so thank you but yes, we have clarified that you are the third member, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't hear. Thank you.
All right then, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. Now we have action item D, the Citizen Advisory Committee appointment recommendations, which have been shared with us by Mr. Sutton. And I will ask for a motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin, a second. Mrs. Holtz. Is there any discussion? All right then, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. So now we have action item E, resolution regarding additional funding for fiscal year 2022-23. Motion to approve. Mrs. Anderson, a second. Mrs. Riggs. And before we entertain any discussion, we have Ms. Pate here, who's going to provide us with a quick summary. Thank you. Our Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. The resolution regarding additional funding for fiscal year 22-23 before you tonight is a result of some final changes in the special session of the General Assembly to the 2022-2024 biennial budget that they passed on June 1st. With those final changes, it did increase our state allocation of funding by a little over $5.7 million. And this is mainly due to the increase in basic aid and some supplemental funding, and it was offset by some decreases in at-risk funding and also a decrease in funding in the compensation supplement since they moved their date from July 1st to August 1st, and so that gave them a little bit of savings. But that did result in that additional amount of state money to us of a little over $5.7 million. And in this resolution, it says that these state fundings, we have recommended that 1%, we can fund a 1% cost of living adjustment to employees. The other piece of this adjustment has to do with the bonus that's effective December 1st, 2022. The General Assembly provides a little over almost $6.5 million out of their ARPA, which is basically their federal ARP money, and that is what they are going to fund SOQ positions for a $1,000 bonus. We also are going to fund the non-SOQ positions using our ESSER funds so that all employees would receive that $1,000 bonus in December 1. Because that is coming from federal funding, we are requesting that additional almost $6.5 million to be appropriated to our categorical grant funds, because that will be federal funding that we will account for under our grant fund account. And then the second resolution has to do with the salary scales. HR prepares those scales for us based on the changes that were done.
I'm sorry, yes, so there are two separate ones, but we only now have the one on the floor for discussion.
Okay.
No, and I realize we didn't read the resolution, which we should probably do before you go on. So can I ask our Vice Chair, please?
Whereas the fiscal year 22-23 budget was adopted by the City Council on May 11th, 2022, and whereas the City of Virginia Beach's adopted budget ordinance appropriated funds to the school board of the City of Virginia Beach, And whereas the Special Session 1 General Assembly adopted its final changes to the 22-24 biennial budget on June 1st, 2022, and whereas state funds will increase $5,722,478, and whereas the General Assembly provides $6,472,855 for a $1,000 bonus payment for each SOQ-funded instructional and support position in fiscal year 22-23 using federal ARPA pandemic relief funds. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an additional appropriation of $5,722,478 into the school operating fund and $6,472,855 into the categorical grants fund. And whereas appropriations of funds must be approved by the City Council prior to the expenditure of funds by the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach. And now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an additional appropriation of $5,722,478 into the school operating fund. And be it further resolved, these state funds will be used to provide an additional 1% cost of living adjustment for all employees. And be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an additional appropriation of $6,472,855 into the categorical grants fund. And be it further resolved, these federal funds will be used to provide a $1,000 bonus payment for each SOQ-funded instructional and support position. And be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach approves and affirms the necessary appropriation and recommended uses of these funds. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of the city council, the city manager, and the city clerk.
Thank you. So now, if you may proceed focused on this resolution.
So I wasn't going to add any more to this resolution other than what I already said, and then I can add to the next one.
All right, so discussion, Mrs. Franklin.
So I'm super happy that we are having this discussion and that the General Assembly voted that way. I would like to, and maybe do a substitute amendment. I think that I would like to see us possibly do a 1% bonus to all employees as opposed to make it a cost of living increase. One of the reasons that I feel that way is because while I love the idea of giving everybody a 1% increase, while I also individually on a separate issue, you know, we've heard it discussed about the 2% to just teachers. And I love both ideas. I would love to give 2% to teachers. I'd love to give 1% across the board. I would like to think that we want to look at the study that we have been talking about, the compensation study, before we make potentially a permanent change, because I think that it's important for us to really look at, you know, just like we made adjustments to salary for the custodians, the bus drivers, and TAs. You know, I would kind of like to see if we are on task or on point for all the different positions before we would make, you know, just a general increase across the board. So to me personally, I think that it's great that we've got these additional funds, and I want to give them and dole them out. But I would almost prefer to do it as a 1% bonus, salary bonus, as opposed to a COLA of this year, and then take a closer look at that potentially after, because July, I think we're going to be discussing the compensation study at our retreat. And I just personally would like to get some more information about what that study looks like, as opposed to, you know, if we definitely are needing some adjustments to salary while we've got this opportunity.
Is there a second for this substitute motion? Mrs. Hughes, all right, discussion. We have Mrs. Riggs, and Mrs. Melnick, and Mrs. Hughes.
That sounds great, but personally, if I was going to give the 1%, it would definitely be as part of the COLA or a raise, not a bonus, because as a past teacher and a retired teacher, they want that in their VRS. Bonuses
Yes.
do not go in the VRS. It will do them no good. They're already getting a $1,000 bonus in December. And I can tell you, if you asked the teachers and the employees what they'd rather have, they're going to tell you 100% this to be put in a COLA or in their raise, not a bonus. So I am totally against a bonus.
Can I just ask a question in response to that, though? So if this is something that will be continuing, I guess my question is, if we do it this year, just to be able to allow us to review the compensation plan, it's not something that might not happen, next year, but it's just something that we could review and have that information available to us as well.
Can I respond to that? My question would be about, to review the compensation would be to Ms. Pate. I'm sure these are the kind of things that you look at down the road and in the future. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, when this was presented and we already had said anything that comes to us should go before as a raise. Anything we get, we want it to go there. We've already made that decision. That decision was made back last year at our retreat and has been said continuously through the year. Anything we get, we want it to go as compensation to our employees, all our employees we talked about. Now, I know Mrs. Manning, you've told us how you felt about that. But we've all, many of us on the board have felt it needed to go to everyone. I've been a part of an employee in the Virginia Beach school system for many years. I've represented employees of not just teachers, but all employees. And I do know, and I've, looked at some of the emails we've got today. It's not a lot, but I can tell you that concurs with what the general feeling is with compensation for all employees.
If we could stick now with just
Okay?
the bonus
So I just want to
question.
say that I'm asking Ms. Pate, did you, when this was, recommended to you a couple of weeks ago when it came in, what were your thoughts about, that?
Well, certainly that was.
That
what
we
had
could
al-
continue to
that's
do
what our
this.
communication has been from the beginning, is that any additional monies that we would receive from the state or even the city at that point, we would want to make it as part of our compensation. We are trying to compete with other districts. Chesapeake just came back in and gave their support staff additional money. Ms. Woodhouse shared that with me. I don't know for sure, but it could be likely that they got additional state money, and that's where that went, and that's what their superintendent communicated.
So just a reminder, the motion on the floor now, the substitute motion is to substitute the 1% COLA for with a bonus. So that's what I'm asking that the discussion be focused on right
Well,
now.
I mean, and her question was, do you think it could we continue this? Because, of course, if it's a raise or a COLA, it has to be continued.
we
If
will
it's a
build that
bonus,
in-
it's not,
yes.
and I think that's what you're concerned about.
Yeah, we
Well,
will build that into
and just
our base.
only because we've been talking about this compensation study for as long as I've been on the board. And I think that for me personally, it's not that I don't think that anybody doesn't deserve a 1%, or I just personally would like to have that information to make sure that we have a clear picture, a clear path of what those salary adjustments might need to look like when we find out that perhaps, custodians or teacher assistants, occupational therapists is kind of my thing. And so I guess that.
No, we're talking just now about a bonus versus a raise.
Correct.
A compensation raise.
But my feeling about that is because I would like to see the compensation study that we talk about in July to understand, and that's the only reason I'm even expressing this.
Okay, I think
cons-
you've had, yes.
Yeah, mhm.
I don't think it's fair for anybody to ask you to explain that again. Okay, so we have Mrs. Hughes and Mrs. Weems. Next.
Oh, you said Miss Hughes, but it's Miss Weems, then Miss Blowens.
Okay, well, you were up there. Miss Weems, go ahead, please.
I can certainly, understand that, that we do need to look at that, compensation plan. Like Ms. Franklin said, we've been we always say refer to the compensation plan. We're going to refer to it. So we need to have it so that we can actually refer to it. But, and we have to remember that, you know, this is not just a 1%, it's 1% added to what we've already agreed. So I don't want someone just to come in and say, oh, they're only talking about a 1% raise. And people that follow it know it, but I just wanted to clarify that up. So, yeah, I think that's probably the more responsible, fiscally responsible thing to do, to add this as a bonus right now, and then really study and see what the compensation plan has to tell us. But my question is, before I make a final comment, is Dr. Spence, when is the compensation plan going to be delivered? Do you know? Can you anticipate ballpark?
Well, you'll have an initial conversation around that study, around the initial findings around the survey at the retreat in July.
Right.
You won't have the study itself finalized until a little bit later in the fall.
In the fall. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And may I ask one more question, Ms. Rye, to Ms. Pate?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Pate, if we find that the compensation plan tells us something, or if we get more money for some reason locally or state or whatever, we can always add something later as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm not hearing an answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Owens and then Mrs. Anderson.
Yep, and I'll be real brief. I can't get behind the idea of doing this as a bonus. My two concerns with it are, well, one, bonuses are going to be taxed differently than if it's put in COLA. And so we're really doing our employees a disservice because they're going to have less of it to take home now, in addition to over the years for VRS. My other thing about looking at that compensation study, which I know that we need to obviously look at, is that I feel very confident that the compensation study is not going to come back saying we are overpaying anybody at this point. And so giving this 1% now might get us a little closer to how much we are underpaying all of the different professions that we have. And so that's not a concern for me, that we need to wait so that we're not putting the money, you know, someplace it doesn't belong. We are underpaying everybody across the board. And so this is one tiny little bitty step in that right direction.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson.
So, I think it's important to understand that, adding the 1% to their already 5% will give them a 6% increase, and it will go toward their retirement. The bonus will not go toward retirement. And that, as a retired teacher, it's extremely important to have that money go toward retirement. But not just as a retired teacher assistants, retired bus drivers, retired anyone who works in our school system who's a part of VRS. It's very important to have that go toward their retirement. So a bonus does not do that, and and as was just pointed out, it's taxed differently as well. So I'm sorry, but I'm against this. I know your intention is good, and I can't wait to hear this study, this compensation study that we're getting ready to hear more about. But I do believe that, you know, at that time, we're probably going to hear that we need to add a good 10% raise to our teachers and staff.
So my thinking on this, though, is again, I love the thought of giving a 1% raise across the board. My thinking, though, is, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what the future budget looks like, but if we do this and then we find out, let's just use occupational therapists as an example. So if we find then that we are severely underpaying one subgroup versus another, what happens, because we have a budgeted amount every year, maybe this is just my lack of experience, but we have a budgeted amount every year that we have for compensation. So how are we then going to be able to make adjustments to salaries where we feel like we are severely off in terms of those subgroups? How do we then make shifts, so to speak.
Go ahead,
Very
Krista.
well.
I was, and he may have something else to add, but I would say when we have big studies like that, any type of compensation study, it is highly likely that we're not going to be able to do everything at one time. And anytime we do any adjustments to scale of that magnitude, as large as we are, we would have to do it in phases, and those would have to be looked at and analyzed and prioritized, and of course brought before the board for vote and consideration. Mhm.
We have done that before. It's been a little while.
Mhm.
The other, the other answer is that's the annual budget discussion where
Mhm.
you would look at what revenues are available to you and then determine how you're going to prioritize those. And our goal is to have the compensation study in front of you before the next annual budget discussion.
Well, and again, I'm just thinking when we have, if I have a windfall of something I wasn't planning on, I'm going to do my study. I'm going to determine. I'm just going to spend it. I guess was my thinking about this is I want to do my research and figure out what the best investment or the best use of those monies would be. And I guess that's really the reason I wanted to do this. And I'm just concerned that once you give salaries or compensation to people, you can't take it back then. And just having this money right now is an opportunity to have us have the ability to make adjustments where necessary in future budgets. Whereas if we just, I don't want to say spend it because believe me, I understand that everybody deserves it. That is not my concern at all. It's just that how do we make those shifts efficiently in the future where we find those compensation deficits in areas that are needed. I guess that was just my thought on that, so.
Right, and I think, again, based on what you heard Ms. Pate say, our next steps would be, we would, after we have the compensation study, we would begin to work with the board to prioritize where do you want to make adjustments on the scales. First of all, we need to look at our scales. Do we have the right scales? That's a big question that'll come out of the compensation study first. And then once you've looked at that, what do you want to prioritize in terms of making adjustments? And as Crystal said, like the last time this was done, there were like multi-year, 10-year plans of how we're going to make adjustments to our scales in order to meet the demands of the study. And then we follow through on that on an annual basis during the budgeting process by saying, so you might remember, we have a phased plan and we're asking you to do phase 2 of this plan. That's the general way that we would handle that. And I understand your point. So the recommendation that came forward from administration here was based on the analysis that was done during this year's budget cycle about the monies that we had available.
Mhm.
And we did say, and we did have a long conversation about it during the budget process, recognized there was no board vote on it, but there was a long conversation about any additional state funds that might come in are funds that we would put towards compensation. So it isn't, so we didn't recommend like we go buy buses with it, right? Like we didn't
Sure,
add
yeah,
to a bus
yeah,
cycle,
right,
like we put it into compensation. So really the question is, do you want to figure out how to do targeted compensation? We can't give you that information based on the compensation study. Or did we give it to all employees? So our recommendation was give it to everybody because we can't give you that information based on the compensation study.
So, can I just ask this question then? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor this point, but if we did provide this 1% increase, when does that go effect? Does it have to be done tonight, or can we wait until after the compensation? I'm just asking.
No, that would be part of this year's fiscal, the coming school year's budget. And so we would need to make sure that we get that into, that's what this budget resolution really is for, is to get that into next school year's budget.
Sure, next week. When does it
Yeah,
start?
July 1 is when
Okay,
it starts.
July 1, okay.
Okay,
That-
we have
thank you.
Mrs. Weems and then Mrs. Holtz.
I'm sorry, I meant to lower my hand.
Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Holtz.
I cannot support a bonus. Let's take a breath and think what we're talking about. 1%. As a teacher who received a salary here from Virginia Beach, whenever we got a raise, I always divided that into weeks by my paycheck. I go buy I'm going to go downtown and buy a Coke, and I've spent that 1% raise. I doubt when we go through this study whether they're going to say, oh my God, we're overpaying teachers. Let's take back that 1% raise. We were just too hasty in giving them that. I can't support this.
We've covered the cues, so the substitute motion on the floor to substitute this resolution with a bonus, all in favor, show a raised hand.
We have 3 ayes. 3. Oh. Ms. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes, I will support this.
Thank you. We have 4 ayes.
All right. All opposed, show a raised hand.
And we have 7 nays. The substitute motion did not pass.
All right, so that brings us back to the original resolution. Any further discussion? Mrs. Manning?
Yes, so for probably the last 5.5, how long have I been on the board? 6, I don't, whatever. Since I've been on the board, I've been trying to advocate to increase our teacher salaries. And what I recall us talking about at last year's retreat is kind of thinking outside the box on ways that we can do that. It's so difficult for us to give our teachers more money when it has to be spread out across the board. And, you know, we did do some targeted salary increases when we had a major issue with a bus driver shortage. And when we realized we needed to improve our custodian salaries and teacher assistants, we did do targeted salary increases. And so I'm asking the board again, let's do, you know, I keep going back to a message. I think the whole board got this message. It was an 8th grade parent who said last year, their 8th grade student didn't have a teacher, a regular teacher. It was a substitute for the whole year who didn't know really science. And so this is a real issue. So I think this has to be a business decision for us as well, so that we make sure that our children have teachers in the classroom that know their subjects. And so that's why I am proposing a substitute motion. With the resolution, I sent it to all of you via email, and Ms. Toniato printed it out. It would be the same as the existing resolution. The only change would be, rather than further resolve, these state funds will be used to provide an additional 1% cost of living for all employees. It reads, further resolve, these state funds will be used to provide an additional 2% cost of living adjustment for classroom teachers. And all of the other would stay the same, the bonus and everything else.
Is there a second to this substitute motion, Mrs. Hughes? Okay, discussion. Mrs. Melnick?
So while I understand that, I went through a list of all of our employees, and so I think the message that this board would be sending is some of the people on this one page, some of them, would be getting a 2% raise, and the rest of the people on this page and these 5 additional pages would not. And so I think that's the wrong message. And just 5 hours ago, we heard that we still have 269 unfilled classified positions. I cannot support. I believe that everybody, all of our employees, deserve that additional 1%. All of them. At the last school board meeting, I think I said I repeated some words of some of our employees, and they weren't just classroom teachers, that said this was absolutely the hardest year of their career. They would have taken back the COVID year with virtual teaching compared to this past year. And I think that we should be valuing every single person that works for Virginia Beach City Public Schools and the work that they do every day. I did pose this question to some administrators and a lot of teachers in my neighborhood, and they all agreed that they can't imagine, and these were teachers, I wouldn't want that 1%. I'd want it on my own. I would want to share it with all of our colleagues. And we also heard that from the VBA president tonight. So I thought that was really important too. And I will yield to my colleagues on that.
Mrs. Anderson?
Riggs, Hughes.
So, I was a classroom teacher for 36 years. And I pride myself on that. I loved it. But my teacher assistant, when I taught kindergarten, was extremely important. The reading resource teachers, the science, the music teacher, you know, the PE teacher, the art teacher, they were extremely important too. For one thing, because I had art, my students had art and PE and music, I was able to have planning time. But that allowed me to do my job more efficiently. So I wouldn't want to leave out the PE teacher and the music teacher and the art teacher. But your resolution says classroom teachers. And that does not, you didn't say instructional staff, you said classroom teachers. Classroom teachers are just that, like the homeroom teacher, okay? And it's not, in high school, it could be the science teacher, okay, that would be correct. And it might be an art, the classroom teacher for an art, but in elementary school, it's not. They are the specialists. Specialists would not be included. Teacher assistants would not be included. Bus drivers are not included. Janitors are not included. Secretaries are not included. Cafeteria workers are not included. All of those people, guidance counselors, are not included as classroom teachers. They are instructional, but they're not classroom teachers. So, but all of those people are very important and help to make us get through this school year, this past school year. And you talk to any teacher and they will tell you that their jobs in doing a great job are dependent on everybody coming together like we did this past year. That's how we were able to have 5 days a week instruction. Everybody jumped in and participated and made it work. The reading resource teachers jumped in the classrooms and helped, you know, but everybody made it work. The secretaries, the school counselors, everybody came together. So we shouldn't be leaving out any of those people. And I can tell you that teacher assistants are very much a part of the instruction for students and should also be included. And the main reason why we targeted teacher assistants recently was because for years, teacher assistants have been saying, just pay us a minimum, just give us a living wage. And because they were so underpaid. I mean, when you can have somebody go to McDonald's and start handing out hamburgers and French fries, and they're making more money than our teacher assistants who are helping teachers, you know, do individualized instruction and helping with small group instruction. You know, and yes, we targeted bus drivers just recently. We upped their pay because we need to give them a living wage. They're transporting the most important thing. They're more than any truck driver on the road. I'm telling you, truck drivers are very important to our economy, but school bus drivers transport the most important things to families, their children. So it's very important that we include everyone in this, and so I'm definitely against tearing it apart and saying, you know, 2% for everyone. That's not right. That's not fair to everyone else that's a part of our school system. Because everybody makes our school system what it is. So I do believe that I cannot support this 2% for just teachers.
A few more in the queue. Let's try to stick with new points moving forward. Mrs. Riggs?
I just want to reiterate what Mrs. Woodhouse told us tonight about in the the amount of money that Chesapeake has increased for their non-instructional. Can you elaborate that for us, please, real quick? I mean, you just kind of offhandedly said it, but just.
Yes, ma'am. The Chesapeake initially had recommended, but I just saw the article come out that has been confirmed, that teachers received a 10% raise, all classified, non-instructional 14% raise, and they just increased their administrators from 5% to 7%. That was just finalized unanimously last night, and the article just came out today.
Okay, so to me, that does it. We can't afford to lose anybody else in any of these positions. I mean, I think we were kind of blindsided. You know, I think had we known a little bit more about that, we would have stepped this up even more, and I wish we could have and would have. And as I just have to say one more time about the bus drivers, guys, if we didn't do something with these bus drivers, we were going to have to stop transportation for academies. That was the thing that was on the chopping block. Can you imagine what our families and parents would have done? I mean, that's one of our premier offerings that we offer in Virginia Beach. We had to do something. I mean, I thought that presentation that I guess Jack Freeman and your our transportation person, I don't remember names that well because it changes so much, gave us was like dire. We had to do it. And we still have to do it, guys. I mean, that just blows me away that you just gave us that. That makes it even more. Let's do it, guys, you know. And I get it. We will have to do, I mean, I've been around long enough that I've, had these compensation studies and listened to them, and not on the board, but sitting out there as a teacher, as a representative for VBEA, as, whatever. I've listened. I've, been a recipient of it. But we have to move, and we can't keep putting these things off because we did. I think we're in a position what makes it even more dire to do this now. And I get the teachers, I understand, but every teacher I know will tell you, I could not have done this without everyone else. I would not want to take an extra 1% and leave my support system, bus drivers, custodians, teacher assistants behind. I can't do it. And so because of that, I mean, I understand. I get it, but I just can't do that. So, sorry.
Okay, we have Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Manning.
So I would like to point out one thing when you held up what we were giving people, these people 2, these people 0. It's actually, as was pointed out earlier, would be 5 and 7, not 0 and 2, because that's in addition to the 5% raise that's already there. And as always has been pointed out, we already do targeted raises. I hear some rhetoric tonight about if you give teachers a higher raise, then it sends the message that other people are not important, and that's not true. When teachers' assistants were targeted, you were not telling teachers they were not important. When bus drivers were targeted, you were not telling food services they were not important. When custodial salaries were targeted, you were not telling another group that they were not important. Smart money goes where you need the most people. That way, there's more bang for your buck. It does not mean there is no value to other people. And while we're discussing what Chesapeake did, Chesapeake clearly spends differently. If you notice, the percentage they gave their administration was less than what they gave their other employees. And we can do that if y'all want. I mean, you can make an administrative recommendation to that effect if you would like, but I don't see anyone doing that. Your people that are in the schools really are the backbone of your operation. So, I mean, there are other adjustments you can make. You can put the money, you have a finite amount of money to spend, and where you are short is where you need to focus things.
Okay, Mrs. Manning.
So I was going to say some similar things regarding value. It's just because I want to give teachers 2% more at 7% and everybody else 5% doesn't mean I don't value all of our employees. So I take offense to that statement. But when I posed this question to Dr. Spence, if he could calculate for me how much would it cost to give additional pay to classroom teachers, I specifically stated licensed teachers who serve full-time in our schools. So I believe it should include health and PE teachers. They serve full-time in our schools and they're licensed teachers. It should include art, any teacher. So I'm not sure where it came from that it doesn't include those teachers. Ms. Woodhouse, I believe you calculated that for me. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am. Licensed teachers, instructional staff includes elective teachers. So health and PE, art, foreign language, band, music, all of those individuals are included under instructional staff, classroom teachers. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, and somehow word got out because we were getting emails that I was against health and PE teachers. So I'm not sure how that got out there, but excuse. Well, health and PE teachers are classroom teachers, and so are art teachers. I mean, they all are. So, again, this is not about not valuing someone. When we gave our bus drivers additional money, it wasn't that we devalued everyone else. We saw a need, and we had to address that need. And we need to address this need with our classroom teachers as well. And so I'll leave it there.
All right, we have two more in the queue, Mrs. Melnick and Mrs. Weems.
Ms. Pate, how more creative could we have gotten with additional funding for employees if City Council hadn't kept our $22 million in reversion dollars?
We're pretty tight. I mean, we try to balance that with non-personnel items that we need. We certainly don't want to discount what those items that we need in order to support our classrooms as well and our programs that are on there. So we do try to balance that with the needs of the division, along with anything that includes, equipment replacement, interactive whiteboard replacements, I mean, all kinds of non-personnel things. So we try to make that balance based on the budget development cycle.
Can I just piggyback on that? What would 22 million have done to salaries?
So we talked about that. And I want to be clear, it wasn't reversion funding that was held back from the city. It was
Revenue sharing.
new revenue available to the city. That I just want to be clear because I don't want anybody listening to misunderstand. It was new revenue available to the city that the city put a lockbox around a certain percentage of the tax in the city in order to deal with stormwater, which removed about $22 million of available revenue from the revenue sharing formula to the school division. And so that decision was made during this conversation about budget. So had what $22 million would have done, we calculated, would have enabled us to get to, if we didn't do a targeted raise, a 10% raise for all staff, or with a targeted raise, some variation in there where you would have had a little bit more, you would have had a little bit more opportunity to differentiate a little bit more across the levels. Still wouldn't have got us completely competitive with our neighbors to the west, but a little bit more.
Okay, Mrs. Weems.
Yeah, I was going to keep my mouth shut because it's late, but I have to pipe in and just repeat some things. This rhetoric about devaluing people when we want to give a 7% raise to one group that is nationally in great need and a 5% to another group. It's just ridiculous. It's political. It's shameful. We value all of our employees. We have done this for different groups, and this conversation did not take place for those different groups. So I want that to stop. I mean, that'd be like us saying Chesapeake doesn't value their teachers or their administrators. It's ridiculous. It's just different preferences. Vote. But to see and insinuate that some of us devalue some of our employees I take great offense. I'm offended and I'm ashamed that has come up, and it is ridiculous. It needs to stop.
So I will make a final comment and put this up for a vote that we're talking 1% here. I'm not philosophically opposed wasn't in the past and won't be in the future to targeted increases. I just feel in this one case, this 1% recommendation from the administration, I can support. So with that, I would like to put this forward for a vote, if we may.
We're voting on the amendment, the substitute.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so to repeat the substitute amendment, Mrs. Manning, would you just read, if you would read this, the section that you, the
Sure.
further resolve that you amended
Further
here.
resolve that state funds will be used to provide an additional 2% cost of living adjustment for classroom teachers.
Okay, so the substitute amendment on the floor. Those in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. We have 3 ayes.
All opposed, show a raised hand, please.
We have 7 ayes.
And I'm going to abstain from this. I can't.
Yeah, sure she can.
Wait, hold on, hold. Mrs. Franklin, you have something to share?
Yes, I just want to say, if I can, I'd like to abstain from this because if I am going to give a targeted raise, I really would like to see the budget or the, the compensation study first. So I just feel like I don't have the information. I would.
So generally, that would be a no vote.
Oh.
I mean, well, I'm sorry, a yes vote. Forgive me a moment. I mean, there's not, anybody can, a colleague can provide any reason, Mrs. Zanetti.
Your bylaws don't define what an abstention is. You just have to give a reason for it. So an abstention counts.
So we're back, we're starting at first with the, those opposed to please raise your hand, then we'll get to the abstention. Did we
No,
already did the opposed?
You did.
Okay,
You've done
so I'm
ayes and
sorry.
nays, so you just got the abstention.
All right, so the,
Okay, so we have 3 ayes, 7 nays, and 1 abstention. So the substitute motion did not pass.
all right, so that leaves us with the original resolution on the floor. So all in favor of what is posted on the screen, please show a raised hand.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote?
Yes.
Madam Chair, we have 9 ayes,
All opposed, show a raised hand, please.
and we have 2 nays. The motion did pass.
Okay, so now that leads us to F, the amended salary resolution. This time we'll do the motion, we'll read it, okay? So motion to approve. Mrs. Anderson, a second. Mrs. Riggs. Mrs. Melnick, would you kindly read the resolution?
Whereas the mission of the Virginia Beach City Public Schools in partnership with our entire community is to ensure that each student is empowered with the knowledge and skills necessary to meet the challenges of the future. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has studied the recommended school operating budget in view of state and federal requirements, additional demands for space and operations, the strategic plan, priorities, expectations, competitive compensation for employees, and the best educational interests of its students. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach proposed operating budget has been reconciled to meet the funding from the City Council. And whereas all employees will receive a 5.5% cost of living COLA adjustment and an additional 0.5% step increase. And whereas the instructional experience-based and unified experience-based step pay scales, part-time hourly rates, table of allowances, high school department chairs, non-athletic supplements, athletic supplements, and student activity rates titled below, and as shown in the attachments, are approved and will be effective as shown below. And whereas the percent of compensation increases and the effective dates of the increases are shown below. Attachment A, alphabetical listing of instructional positions. Attachment B, instructional experience-based step pay scale, 7/1/22 to 6/30/23. Attachment C, unified experience-based step pay scale grade assignments, 7/1/22 to 6/30/23. Attachment D, unified experience-based step pay scale, 7/1/22 to 6/30/23. Attachment E, part-time temporary hourly rates, 7/1/22 to 6/30/23. Attachment F, table of allowances, school year 22-23. Attachment G, high school department chairs and non-athletic and athletic supplements, 22-23. Attachment 8, student activity rates, 22-23. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach adopts the salary pay scales and the compensation increases as outlined in this resolution and attachments. Adopted by the school board this 28th day of June 2022.
All right, Ms. Pate, you may, if you can state what may be the obvious, but we want to still be fair to everybody.
Sure. So this is the amended salary resolution. It's in the same format as the salary resolution that the board has already approved. HR prepares this for us and actually applies the percentage of raise that the board has already voted on for compensation. So they just apply it to the applicable salary scales, and the change is no format at all.
So this is directly tied to the vote we
Yes,
took
ma'am.
moments ago, just to make that clear. Right, discussion? All right. Mrs. Manning?
Yeah, I'd like to propose a substitute motion that would just basically change it to what I had proposed earlier. The fifth whereas would now read, all employees will receive a 4.5% cost of living adjustment and an additional half-step increase, and all classroom teachers defined as having a teaching license in and serving in a school, serving students, would receive a 6.5% cost of living adjustment and an additional 0.5% step increase.
Oh, I'm sorry, is there a second, Mrs. Hughes? Okay, discussion. Yes, Mr. Dr. Smith.
So I appreciate that. That's gonna be a problem, should we vote on this, since the board just voted to send over a funding resolution to city council, which will allow for a 6% or 5.5% COLA and a 0.5% step increase for all employees, to then change the salary structure, which would then be out of sync with the funding resolution that's going over to city council. So, I'm just telling you, I don't know how we would adjust the salary resolution to, and it would be in conflict with what the board just voted on.
The point that I made when we started this, to just make it clear that this was a direct tie into what we just voted on.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
it is.
So with that, is there any discussion, further discussion?
Ms. Weems has her hand raised.
Mrs. Weems?
Good job.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, all in favor of this amended salary resolution, show a raised hand, please.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're on the, I apologize. We're on the substitute. All in favor of the substitute resolution? Yes, but I got confused, okay. So can we ask for a vote again? All in favor, show a raised hand.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote on the substitute resolution?
No.
Thank you.
All opposed, please show a raised hand.
We have 9 nays and 2 ayes, so the substitute motion did not pass.
So that brings us back to the amended salary resolution shown on the screen. Okay. All in favor, please show a raised hand.
Mrs. Weems, how do you vote on the initial amended salary resolution as presented?
Yes.
Thank you. We have 9 ayes,
All opposed, show a raised hand, please.
and we have 2 nays. The amended salary resolution did pass.
Thank you. And our final business of the it is an amendment.
It's amended salary resolution FY 2022-23 as read by Vice Chair Melnick has passed.
Thank you, Ms. Toniano. Just to clarify that in case there's anybody watching who's curious, the reason that it says amended is because this is an amendment to a salary resolution which was passed at the last board meeting. And this is amended because we since in the interim time received additional funding. The board just took a vote on what to do with that funding. This salary resolution then needed to be amended to account for that. So I just want the community to be clear. Thanks.
Okay, so our final business of the evening are the committee organization and or board reports. Does anybody have anything to report? Ms. Owens.
Yep, just super briefly, the Equity Council met for their last meeting of the school year on June 22nd. Looking forward to presenting some information to the board at retreat, and they will restart meeting again in September 15th. So I will keep it at that brevity because we'll get more information at our retreat.
Okay, Mrs. Melnick.
The audit committee meets Thursday at 1 o'clock in the little conference room.
Okay, anybody else? Mrs. Riggs.
The policy review committee will meet on the 7th, Thursday the 7th. The 11th, because it says the 7th on my thing. It's the 11th, okay. Okay. I need to tell John.
Okay, that seems to be it. Last call. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.